27th Complete Streets Commission meeting to order, and we'll start the roll call. Let's see, I see. Okay, Commissioner Maloof, yes. Commissioner Oyang and Commissioner Schneider and Suresh here. So we have four. Absent are Commissioner Banerjee, Commissioner Ambiol, and Commissioner Katz. We expect that Commissioner Banerjee will join us later. Okay, so we have four at this time. All right, we have quorums, so we'll continue the meeting. Start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll give 20 seconds for everyone to do that in silence. Okay, thank you all. Let's see, before we get started, let me open it up for public comments on items that are not on the agenda. Items are topics that's not on the agenda. So if you are really wanting to speak on any of these items not on the agenda, please use the raise your hand feature at this time. And I'll call, when you are called upon, please unmute and speak. Okay. All right, I see one hand. Bruce England, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Bruce England. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a former BPAC member for Mountain View, and I currently manage two groups in Mountain View, among other things, Mountain View Coalition for Sustainable Planning and Green Spaces Mountain View. I've been collaborating quite a bit with Maddie Hamilton, who's also on the call, and on Bicycle Coalition Matters, and she wants to start a Los Altos team. I manage the Mountain View team. Anyway, we're very interested in the work that you're doing. We have a focus right now on the El Monte corridor, which I'm sure you're aware of, and how that feeds into Springer and into the rest of Los Altos. I see Questa on your agenda. Anyway, just letting you know, FYI, we're very interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Thanks for your comments. Any other comments not on the item for today, agenda for today? Okay, I don't see any other hands up. Let's get on the agenda. We did not meet in June, so we're going to have to approve the meeting minutes from 22nd of May. But before I get started, I wanted to acknowledge our chair has joined us. So Stacy, thanks for joining us. And I think at this point, I will probably hand over the meeting to you. Why don't you take it away? You're muted, Stacy.
Thank you. So thank you very much to the Vice Chair for hosting the first portion of this meeting. Apologies to everyone that I am late. It was expected that I would be late. So it sounds like we're on the item now to approve the minutes. Before we take a motion in a second, does anyone have any feedback or questions about the minutes? I'm not seeing any, so the floor is open for a motion in a second, please.
I move to approve the minutes from May 25.
A second.
So a motion from the Vice Chair, a second from Commissioner Maloof. And let me see if we can do a show of hands for yes votes. So Vice Chair, myself, Commissioner Maloof, Commissioner Oyang, Commissioner Schneider.
Actually, I'll have to abstain because I was out of the country for that meeting.
Okay, I think you are allowed to abstain, certainly, Tom. I think the city attorney has also guided us. We can vote yes for the process, but we do have 4 yeses, which would carry the motion. So 4 yeses and 1 abstention. Let's move on to the next item. This is the section of the agenda where we go through updates. Item number 2 is the Hetchy Trail crossing. I think, Marisa, you're just going to give an update on this one.
Yes, thank you. And Nafis from my team is actually going to be giving this update for you.
Great.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Stacy. Can you confirm that you can see the
Yes.
main presentation? Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So I'll get started on this topic. Thank you, everyone, for your time and for your interest. I'm Nafis Majd with the City of Los Altos, and I'll be presenting brief updates on the Hetchy Trail Crossing ADA Improvement Project. During this presentation, the project background, existing condition, and crash data, and the proposed design and its purpose will be discussed for these two crossings shown on the project vicinity map here. And a brief schedule of the project will also be discussed at the end of the presentation. The Hetchy path is a bike and pedestrian multi-use path that traverses a portion of Los Altos City and connects to Palo Alto on Estradero Road. The trail is San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, what we call PUC, right-of-way, and provides the SFPUC and the city access for maintenance vehicles. The current path crossing at Los Altos Avenue and Estrelita Way are old and do not meet the current ADA requirements. The city would like to reconstruct these crossings to meet ADA requirements and to enhance this connector. And the project provides the opportunity to add additional features at both crossings for pedestrian, bicyclists, and motorists. On this slide, you will see the tract map, which shows the SF right-of-way, SF PUC right-of-way here, which crosses the Estrelita Way and the Los Altos Ave. A little bit background about this. So the city initiated discussion with PUC for ramp encroachment permit in 2019. And due to accident data and residents' complaint regarding the accessibility because of the roll curve that you can see here on both crossings, actually. We plan to enhance the two trail crossings at Los Altos Avenue and Estrelita Way to meet the ADA, current ADA requirements. Additionally, these ADA non-compliant facilities present liability. We would like to go ahead with updating these crossings. In addition, this trail is a highly utilized trail with a lot of community support for the ADA enhancements. And regarding previous CSC and public input, I'm just going to talk about the recent ones that happened this year, starting 2022. So CSC discussed this project in January 2022 meeting and received an array of potential alternatives for crossing enhancement features, including signage, striping, and speed control measures. The CSC and the public provided some comments to us and their preferences for the various features at each of these crossings. And we've incorporated these feedbacks into the plan, which the main ones are listed here. So the first one is to extend optical speed bar pavement markings all the way across the path and remove some signage to reduce visual clutter. Place slow signs in advance for bikes on the trail and use advanced crossing warning signage. This is only for Los Altos because Estrelita Way has low volume and low speeds in traffic. On this slide, you can see the existing condition On the left-hand slide, you'll see the rolled curb at Estrelita Way. And on the right-hand side, it's Los Altos Ave. So since last CSC meeting, the staff presented the proposed design and improvements and these crossings to the SF Public Utilities Commission Project Review Committee and received many positive feedbacks on the proposed design and the presentation. The city, however, we did have some feedbacks to improve our overall application, but the process is ongoing. So it's not holding us back, but meantime, while they're reviewing our application, we will submit updated project drawings to include specifications for the signs and the bollards. Some examples are like the exact distances and locations for these signs and the depth of their supports. They want clearance with their utilities. And some of the items that shall be included in our specifications, these are items that SFPUC will provide us in near future so that we could include in our specs. One of them is the weight loading limitations, and the other one is the vegetation management and right-of-way policies. And they also require us to dispose debris and remove from SFPUC property, which this is already included in our specs, and also restore project site upon completion and arrange a post-construction inspection with SFPUC. On this slide, you'll see some of the crash and speed data. On Los Altos Ave, we have 2 documented bike-related collision, one in 2018 with a student on the bike and one recent crash in 2022. And speeding is also commonly reported at this crossing. On Estrelita Way, we have a different context since it's a cul-de-sac with less traffic, and residents have raised concern about visibility at the trail crossing, and close calls have been reported here too. On this slide, I've just included, the overall design for these ADA ramp improvements, which project includes removal of existing concrete curb and gutter, sections of existing asphalt concrete roadway, and sections of existing asphalt concrete pathway in 4 locations, and installation of new ADA ramps and AC roadway and AC pathway. It will also include improvements for the sections of the trail adjacent to these crossings. So sections of the trail here, here, and here, which I'll discuss those in further detail in next slides. So this slide talks about the improvement, shows the improvement on Estrelita Way, which includes refreshing the crosswalk and adding yield marking and signage on the street, such as trail crossing and crosswalk ahead, and signage and striping on the trail at both sides of this crossing, which you can see here, to slow and warn bikes such as crossing ahead and watch for cross traffic and stop signs. We also have 2 curb ramps with cast iron truncated domes that it's city standard, and possibility of basically retaining the existing bollards, because we've looked at the existing bollards and they seem to be in good condition. And even if we will go with replacing them in future, we will probably maintain the same location due to, submitting details to SFPUC. There's a long process for that. So since they do look fine and SFPUC doesn't have comment on existing locations. So we'll probably go on with the existing bollards, which are removable and reflective. This slide, you will see the improvements on Los Altos Ave. A lot of it are similar to what we just discussed for Estrelita Way. So we're going to refresh the crosswalk here and refreshing the street striping on Los Altos Avenue itself, adding yield markings on the street and signage on the street, such as trail crossing and crosswalk ahead, and signage and striping on the trail to slow and warn bikes, such as crossing ahead and stop sign. And we're going to have 2 curb ramps here, similar to Estrelita Way. Again, we're going to retain this one existing bollard that we have here. And a little bit about the schedule. So this schedule is assuming everything will go straightforward with regards to the permitting process with SFPUC. And based on the feedback we've received, we believe it will go on smoothly. So we're expecting to put the package out for bid on September 2022. And construction is anticipated in fall 2022, and it will last approximately 4 weeks. With that, I'd like to open the floor for any questions or comments you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Nafis, for giving us this update. Appreciate it. Given that the commission has discussed this project extensively in the past, I think I'm first going to open it up for members of the public who have any questions or comments on this project. Feel free to raise your blue hand. And if you're on the phone, I think you can push *9. So I'm going to start with the first person to raise their hand. Bruce England, you may go ahead, and I'm going to give everyone 3 minutes to speak about this item.
Thank you. Bruce England again, Mountain View. Yeah, just a couple of things on this. I realized very late in the game, so it's not going to be changed, but I wanted to mention Mountain View has a lot of Hetchy right-of-way stretches that they are very interested in doing work on. They did a 2007 feasibility study, which is available, and that might be something, Nafis, if you're interested and you don't have that, you could reach out to me if you want. I can put my email address in the chat to you. Anyway, it's interesting because they look at each of the individual stretches of the right-of-way for potential conversion to trail use instead of parking or whatever it's being used for right now. We have some of them taken advantage of, but just a few. And then secondly, on the incident data, the crashes and so on, I don't know if Los Altos has a means for tracking near misses. Mountain View does through the Ask Mountain View system. So that data goes in along with the police reported incidents as well. So Nafis, again, if you want to know more about that, I can assist, and again, I'll put my email address in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments. And I would just also add that typically for this meeting, the chat is closed because of the Brown Act nature of the meeting. So I think I'm going to ask staff to close the chat, but I'm sure, Bruce, I hope have some way of getting in touch with you. I'm going to call on the next speaker, Maddie Hamilton. Maddie, you will have up to 3 minutes, please.
Hi, thanks. So I realize this is very late in the game and already about to be done, but I'm just curious, was it ever brought up about changing the right-of-way on the crossing? When I use the trail, I personally like having like a continuous flow down it, which the stop signs indicate to me that it's the cars who get their right-of-way first. So was that ever brought up about changing the right-of-way?
So thank you, Maddie, for your comments. I assume you were finished with your questions and comments. And Nafis, I think what I'm going to do is have all of our public speakers finish, and then I'll come back if there's any anything that staff wants to comment on or respond to.
Sure.
Thank you. So our next public speaker is, and pardon me for my pronunciation, Aris Merchant.
It's Eris, but it's fine. Everyone gets it.
I apologize.
My question was just a quick. It was mentioned that the thing would be under construction for 4 weeks, and I was wondering what the status of the trail would be during those 4 weeks. Whether it would be, passable, but you have to go around the construction, or whether it would be like totally closed off, or what. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your speaking today. So Nafis, I'll turn it back to you if you want to respond to anything that members of the public have said.
I can help respond too.
Sure, great, thank you.
Let's see. So the first question about right-of-way for bikes versus cars. We definitely agree with you, Maddie, that we prefer to give, bikes the right-of-way when we can. In this instance, we're just really concerned about safety for the bikes, especially, and we really want the drivers to see the bikes and vice versa. So our idea was to slow or stop all parties, vehicles and bikes, as much as possible, so that everyone can navigate the crossing at a slow, safe speed. So that was the idea there. We wanted bikes to slow down. That's why we have the kind of optical speed bars. And then we wanted to put the stop sign just to really make sure that bikes would know that the cars, while we would like the cars to stop for the bikes, they won't necessarily. So just want to keep everybody as slow and contained as possible. And then as far as the construction and use of the trail during construction, we don't have those details worked out yet. We'll be doing kind of a construction phasing plan, and we will see what needs to happen in order to get it done. It'll be a quick construction project, so hopefully the impacts will be small.
Okay, thank you very much. Members of the commission, do you have any questions or comments for staff? And for members of the public, this would be the time, since public comments is finished, to shut your videos back off. And when we have public comments on the next item, you're welcome to speak again and turn your videos on when you speak as an option. So any members of the commission have questions or comments on this item? I am not seeing any. So let's move on to the next item. The next item is the schoolroutes.org. And Marisa, I don't know if there's any setup here or if we're just gonna call up Jaime. I believe he's presenting on this item. I'm going to do a time check and say that we're about 10 minutes behind. So I will ask Jaime to see if he can catch us up those 10 minutes, please.
We do have a short meeting tonight. So we're getting a little bit behind. Might not be quite as big of a deal as sometimes it is. And we did remove from the agenda one item. We removed it a few days ago. And so the agenda is a little bit shorter than it was even first published as, just to let everybody know. The item that was removed and will be deferred was the update on the citywide traffic model. Jaime will be presenting about the schoolroutes.org app. So Jaime, whenever you're ready.
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. Hey guys, good to see you all. It's been a while, so we're having a good summer. So I'm going to present on schoolroutes.org. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Let me just get this toolbar out of the way. All right, great. This. Okay, so I'm going to present you guys tonight schoolroutes.org. And so this is a platform that Los Altos originally helped fund about a year ago, last summer, when we were going through the development of the Complete Streets Master Plan. So just as a quick reminder, your Complete Streets Master Plan included the development of brand new suggested walking and biking routes for Los Altos. You can find all those maps or those walking routes on losaltoscompletestreets.com. And this is what your maps look like. And when we were going through development of these suggested walk and roll maps, one of the consistent comments that we heard from the commission was that you wanted to find a more technology-based method to deliver to the community this is suggested routes the city was recommending that parents and students take to get to and from school. And so this platform has been up for about a year. And when we originally launched it, it was very simple. It's been modified since, but your walk and roll maps have been online for about a year. So has Cupertino's. Palo Alto just joined onto the platform for demonstration program for next year. But all of your walk and roll maps are available online. And we had an original Apple app that was published about a year ago. But we've since rebuilt the platform. That's what I'm here to show you tonight. Just as a quick note, the Google Android brand new app was just published a couple of days ago, and we're waiting for a final confirmation from Apple that the brand new Apple app is available to download sometime within the next week. But what you can do today, anybody can view the Los Altos walk and roll maps by going to schoolroutes.org. You'll see a link at the top of the screen that says view maps, and that'll take you to this page here. At that point, you can scroll down the list of maps here, or as the platform grows, you can pick your city and then pick whether you're looking for an elementary school, and then get a pull down menu on the type of schools. If you're going to Los Altos, if you're looking for elementary school, you can pick that map here and you'd see it online. Or again, you could just go straight to Covington from the pull down menu and get it directly there. So what the walk and roll maps show today are all of the elements that are on your original walk and roll maps that were developed by Alta Planning and Design, but the brand new schoolroutes.org takes your platform to the next level. So I'm going to demonstrate for you tonight the process that a community member. Can you see my screen, by the way? I should have stopped and asked. You can't. Okay, great. I apologize. So what I want to do is I want to walk you through what a parent or student experience will be like when this becomes available to you sometime over the next week once both apps are published. So from here, if you want to create an account, the account process is fairly simple. So I'm going to create a new account and walk you through that process. And then I'm going to show you the interactive tools that we've built into the platform. So I'm going to make things up here, and I always use Covington Elementary as an example. So I'm going to go with Ryan, and let's give Ryan Covington 408 222. And so as I'm putting this together, I just want to make sure that you're aware. So I'm doing this as a demonstration. So we have temporarily turned off the ability to create fictitious accounts, but this has a security requirement that you, as you create an account, that you validate your email to avoid spam bots, and also for security of the community, so we can validate who's using the platform. So once you create your account, you do have to register if you're a parent, the names of your children. You don't have to give a lot of information, but let's say his name is Elliot. You're signing into Los Altos. You're going to sign into an elementary, Covington Elementary, and you add your student. If you have a second student, let's go with Jill, and she's in Los Altos. If she's at Homestead High School. If you're in a multi-family home where both parents are divorced and remarried several times, you can actually invite co-parents. So the first family that goes in and creates an account can then send an email invitation or text invitation to those additional adults to create an account. And then you would finish your registration process. I'm not going to do that in this specific case, but I'm going to walk you through what those people would see on the platform. And the apps work in the exact same way. So once I come back to the platform, I'm going to log into an existing account that already exists. And these are all demonstration accounts. So once you log in as a community member, you get to see all of the walk and roll maps that you've assigned to your family members. And that's important because anyone can go to the platform today, view maps, and just see what the suggested routes are for your community. But once you become a registered user as a parent or a student, you actually get the ability to create what are called school depot stations within the community. Those are locations that you drop via pin map onto the platform to invite other people to create walking school bus or bike train or carpool programs for the different schools within Los Altos. And so as an example, in this fictitious Bob Covington account that I created, I assigned students or family members to Covington Elementary and Los Altos High School. So Bob has joined a bike chain from a different community, and the number of adults and students that are participating in that bike train show on the platform, but only the registered user accounts get to see those solutions. So I'm going to walk you through the process, and it works the exact same way on the app of what the process is to create these school depot stations within the community. So if I want to create a brand new, let's just say a bike train to Covington. You actually can put whether you're one adult and how many kids are participating in your program, and you get to say what days of the week or for the whole week you're willing to meet other family members to create bike trains to the school. And you set at the time that you want to meet other family members. You set your location. And then once that is created, it's going to be the job of a staff member in the city, likely either going to be Marisa or myself or Andreon, who is your Safe Route to School coordinator, to log in and approve those improvements, approve those school depot stations. Once the dashboard is live later in the next few weeks, once people can download the app will actually track where people walk and bike by time of day, 7 to 9 in the morning, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. in the afternoon, and from 2 to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. And the next day, you'll be able to actually see where are students and parents actually walking and biking to get to school, and compare that interactively against your suggested routes, so you can modify those routes if needed. So in the notifications process, here's the new events that we just created. The bike train Covington that we just created, you can see it here. So someone in the city needs to go in and approve that event. That's important because if there's several bike trains that are, say, within a half a block of one another, the city could actually choose to not approve that event and say, hey, rather than you create your own event, why don't you meet up with Bob's bike train that is half a block away? But in the case that you approve it, the city will also have the option to then send direct messages to residents that can be used for other solutions that I'm going to walk you through shortly. Congrats on setting up your bike train. Good luck meeting other family members. And then you can send, so the city staff will have the ability to direct contact members of the community within the app or directly through the platform, so they see pop-up notifications on their phone. So this was through the Bob Covington account. I'm going to log out, and if I log back into Bob's account online, Bob's bike train shows up on the map now. And there are, let me see here. Actually, I shifted, I forgot which location it was that I set up, but the bike train, the walking school buses, and the carpools all show up online. One of the tools that's created into the account platform as well is the ability for the city to be able to push messages out to the community. So in this specific case, if you wanted to message a direct person within the community, you can do that. Or you could say, I'm going to send a direct message to all the people within the community for a specific school, and then send those people any message you want. So it could be something like, there's a community meeting tonight to talk about bicycle improvements along El Monte Avenue. There's something going on in the community for a PTA meeting, or worst case scenario, I always tell people as the worst case, you have a very powerful tool here with this platform. There's an active shooting scenario at a specific school. You could message parents to say, don't come to school. There is an active shooting event happening within your community. So there's a lot of tools you can do with this platform. You can then shoot it out directly as an in-app message, or you could broadcast out to all Android messages or iOS messages. Or once you filter, you can, choose all parents and send these messages out to people. I'm going to cancel, not send anything out. But if I did push the message when Bob were to log in to his platform, he'd get the messages in directly on his notification screen. So parents can set up the walking school bus, the bike train, and the carpool programs within your community now to help reduce vehicle congestion within your community. So that's kind of the very quick presentation of the platform. The app works the exact same way as the presentation that I just gave you. It's just done all online through the app. So I'm going to stop there and push it back in case you have any questions.
Thank you, Jaime, for showing us this demonstration. Definitely much more advanced from the last time the commission discussed this, and we were asking for how do we move from the paper to something on our phones or something much more interactive. So appreciate the demonstration. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Jaime? Commissioner Maloof?
Hey, thank you, Jaime. This is really awesome. Love the platform. So first question is who's maintaining this website and all the details?
So we created schoolroutes.org out of my firm, Traffic Patterns. And so we created this platform both from a initial stipend through Los Altos. And then we pitch in a matching stipend at my firm to build the platform. And then as cities are coming online, Cupertino just came online, Palo Alto just came online. We have a few other cities that are lined up to join for the fall. We've been advancing features. That's why you see a lot of tools that you see today. So what we're looking at our firm to do is for each of the cities to take over the responsibility of maintaining and approving school depot stations within their community. Los Altos has already asked us to do that for them. So when someone creates a school depot station, I receive both a text message and an email saying, hey, Bob.Covington has requested a brand new bike train within the community, and we approve it. One of the things that we're looking at with Cupertino, though, specifically is to receive a parent email list so we can validate that specific school depot stations. More importantly, the carpools are being created by registered parents with accounts at a school within the community. So that's
my
the
question
process.
was more, I mean, these are fairly complex platforms. And presumably as you get more registrants and folks who are showing interest in the platform, this is going to require significant IT support, feature additions, security. Who's going to take care of that?
So that's what we're doing at our firm. We have a hired programmer that works for Traffic Patterns that's dedicated strictly to this platform as it develops and goes out.
All right, so really your firm would take care of that. Got it. Okay. And then the second and last question, more perhaps a request than a question, but I'll frame it initially as a question. How do you measure, or how easy is it to measure the adoption rates?
So one of the things that we'll see right away is downloads for the app within the community. Los Altos has not yet advertised this platform. That's one of the things that we're looking to do sometime before the start of the school year. We were waiting for this presentation to the commission. A lot of the other cities are looking at doing direct mailers within postal mail to let residents know that the app is available, creating partnerships with the school districts to make sure that they reach out to their parents, let them know that the app is available for download, and PTAs. So we can definitely register. We'll see the number of registered users by parent and student accounts. And one thing that I forgot to mention is only students in junior high and high school can create the school depot station, and the app will actually track how much students bike or walk within the community, so the city can choose to later provide incentives and rewards for the students that walk and bike the most.
Are there other commissioners with questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Schneider.
So Jaime, I was looking at your website, there's school routes. I pick Los Altos and I pick high school. You have 3 high schools listed. One of the issues I'm wondering there, Mountain View High School is not listed, and there are students that are in Los Altos that actually go to that school. And so I'm wondering if you're planning to add that, and if you're not, why not? Start with that question.
Sure. So we only imported or recreated the walk and roll maps that were developed through the Complete Streets Master Plan process. So Mountain View High School specifically did not get included in the Los Altos Complete Streets Master Plan. But we can. Actually, that's something I didn't walk you through, but it's really, really easy now to create walk and roll maps and modify them with this platform and deliver that platform to residents as the routes change for whatever reason. So if Los Altos is looking to do a walk and roll map for Mountain View High School, Marisa really just needs to ask. And then we probably reach out to Mountain View and say, hey, what's your suggested walk and roll map? And expand it into the Los Altos community. It's that simple. It takes about 15 minutes, 20 minutes to develop a walk and roll map online, and pushing it is as simple as a click online.
So Jaime, I'm going to ask you, sorry to interrupt everyone. I'm going to ask you and Marisa to refresh our memories, but I thought the reason we didn't do the Mountain View High is because the city of Mountain View was saying that they were looking at doing maps for the schools in Mountain View. Is that not correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
So if Mountain View finishes that map, provides that map, then you'd be able to load it into our system. So students from Los Altos could use it to go to Mountain View High.
That's correct. And one thing I forgot to mention also, by the way, is that on the app will actually guide a parent or a student along the suggestion route. So if you live a couple of blocks from where the routes end, the app will provide voice turn-by-turn instructions to get you to the closest connection point to the route and then guide you the rest of the way.
Commissioner Schneider.
Okay, so I understand that, but maybe you want to put in there like Mountain View High School TBD, or, so that people know that it's coming. The other question would be is, are there other instances like that? So instead of a high school, elementary, or middle, that residents, because in my opinion, it should be the residents of Los Altos and where they go, and not necessarily the school that's in the city limits, just like this one for Mountain View High School. So I wonder if there's other instances of that, and if we're covering those also.
I think we are. So I'll use the example of Cupertino Middle School. So we have 2 different Cupertino Middle School maps on the platform. One that's dedicated for Los Altos that extends further into the Los Altos community to the west of Patrol Expressway. And then we have another map for Cupertino Middle School that's actually dedicated for the city of Cupertino, because that school serves both communities. And it shows a limited reach into Los Altos and an extended reach into the Cupertino community. So it depends on where a user, whether it be a parent or a student, is actually trying to access the school from within their community. They'll see a different map.
Okay, well, I'll look forward to the additions. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other commissioners with questions? I'm not seeing any other questions, so I'm going to open it up for public comment now. If anyone from the public has a comment or question, you're welcome to raise your hands in the app or *9 on the phone. We're going to start with Bruce England, and Bruce, you can have up to 3 minutes on this item. Please go ahead. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, this will be short. I'm just curious about the Mountain View High School use case that was mentioned. The map can be ported in, it sounds like, but then you talk about the pinning feature, adding, the trains and so on to the carpools and so on to the maps that are in the system. But I assume those would remain within the system and wouldn't be backported over to Mountain View. So the Mountain View hosted maps would lack that unless Mountain View determined that it would be good to become part of this program.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, that's correct. So when you register to the platform, and again, registration for being able to both view and create walking or school depot stations was really important as we were developing the program for us as the developers and for the city customers that were providing us feedback on tools they wanted for safety of parents and students. So when we create the Mountain View walk and roll map, should the city request that, and I do want to be clear, the city of Los Altos has not requested that we add that, but if they did, we would actually only allow Los Altos users to create depot stations. Now that doesn't stop a Mountain View resident from registering as a Los Altos parent, but that really wouldn't be the intention, right? The intention would be for Mountain View residents to be able to use that on their own for their own school depot station events. But the accounts when you register, you do have to say what city you live in.
Okay, thank you, Jaime, for answering the member of the public's question. Any other public comments? And I'm not seeing any other public comments. I'm going to bring it back to the commissioners for feedback. Who would like to go first? Tom, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I like the idea. It looks good. I think job's well done. It's progressing, and so I'm looking forward to getting more of the updates and rolling in other data. So keep up the good work.
Thank you, Commissioner Maloof.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Thank you guys for making it happen. A tool is only as good as the frequency of being used. And so I like that you come back to the commission with 2 checkpoints. School starts in 2 weeks, I think, something like that, mid-August, August 9, I think, right? And so let's call it 3 months after August 9, so November is the first checkpoint with a measure of frequency of use, how many registered users and how many students are actually using it as a fraction of the population, and to what extent it is, we think it becomes a tool to alleviate some of the driving issues that we've seen in the last year. And the second checkpoint, let's call it 6 months after that, would be April, May of next year. And then let's see if we can put some metrics around what defines usability and adoption. But other than that, kudos, fantastic, nice work.
Thanks, Nadine. And I do want to, I know that we're only in the comment stage, but I do just want to make a quick note. I think that the features that are available to the community are going to be what guide the adoption of the platform. So within Santa Clara County, we're very fortunate that Valley Transportation Authority has an education and encouragement program for safe routes to school to help do things like this. That's actually what funded this program for Los Altos. And so the use of that, what we're calling a wallet for students to track walking and biking activity and allow the city to reward that, whether it be simple, just email notices. We've actually created partnerships with retail firms to say, hey, you reached 300 miles biked in a month, you want a Los Altos t-shirt or a Los Altos high school t-shirt or whatever it is that you want, those tools will be available for there. That's what's going to drive the adoption. And those are all things that for Santa Clara County are funded within the community. One of the other elements that we're looking to push into the program is Los Altos is very, very unique. It also has one of the other platform solutions that we develop, our smart city signal system. So what we're not doing right now at launch, but plan to do sometime early next year, is families that are using the app will actually see interactively the real-time signal status of your traffic signals in Los Altos, what's red, what's yellow, what's green, where there's people waiting, and eventually for pedestrians to be able to say, push the button for a traffic signal to cross the street through the app, or for bicyclists to be able to say, as they're riding towards the traffic signal, so should the city choose to, to be able to send a detection request to the traffic signal through the app, to get a green. Or in this case, more importantly, to say extend the green if you're reaching it towards the end of a green. There's a lot of tools that will drive adoption of the app that are still under development.
Other commissioners? Go ahead, Vice Chair.
Thank you. Jaime, that's the tool is really fantastic and also quite ambitious. I think there's a lot of features that I think people can benefit from. I think my main comment would be for you to collect as much feedback as possible. Beyond just the traffic and the conditions and so on, but also usability and what are the barriers to adoption, what problems that people might see along the way. And I look forward to some of that feedback and the data when you come back to us. But again, it's a nice job. Looking forward to it all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Commissioner Oyang, I don't see you with your hand up. So if you have some feedback, shout out. Otherwise, I'll give a little bit of feedback, but thank you very much, Jaime. I'm pleased to see some of our adjacent cities are also using this. And I think we should consider having you come to speak to the VTA BPAC as well and to share this information. I will certainly inquire if we can have that on our agenda there.
Happy to do so, just let me know.
Okay, great. And then just a little feedback from my end. I completely agree with what Commissioner Snyder is saying, is let's make sure we're serving all the residents of Los Altos. And you have done a giant step forward from where we were a year ago with that, but let's keep making progress towards that. So Mountain View High would definitely be one of the areas to look at. Another thing to look at, when you mentioned Cupertino Middle School, you talked about 2 different maps. Is there a way to rationalize those maps? So there's one map, and we may not have the answer to that today, but maybe that's something that can be done in the future, a collaboration across the cities while still maintaining the details that we need for our residents here on the streets of Los Altos. And I would also just say, I support making sure we, are promoting the platform and getting good use out of it, as well as I would encourage the city of Los Altos to have a hard think about the privacy and safety of families and kids who are using this app. And it sounds like I heard Cupertino had a little more stricter privacy or safety in place for what got approved and who was approving it and how the approval process is. I would just take that one back and make sure we have everything in place that we want for that area. So Jaime, thank you so much. And I know this has been on our agenda and got kicked off a couple times because we were running late, but appreciate that it was on tonight, and really the work you've done is great. Thank you. So thank you. So let's move on to, and we'll see you back with brief updates on this item in the future. So let's move on to item number 4, and that is an update on the VTA bike parking guidelines. I know, Marisa, I think I saw we had a special guest, Lola, for this item. This is an item that we worked on the VTA BPAC, but I wanted to make sure that all commissioners were aware of the VTA bike parking guideline changes, because we do use those guidelines when we review development project approvals. Marisa, did you want to say something before we have you introduce Lola?
No, I was just going to say we do have a special guest. Lola was kind and generous enough to offer to come present the updated bike parking guidelines to you all. And like Cece said, we do use these guidelines. And so I wanted everybody to be aware of the updates. We don't need to take any action. We don't need to, adopt them or anything like that for our use. We already use them. And so we'll continue using them, and we will moving forward be using the update. So with that, I'll hand it over to Lola. Hello.
Hello, thank you everyone for having me. Let me go ahead and share my screen and see which one I need to do first. I'll do share screen first. No, I don't. I'm going to do slideshow first. No, I'm not. It's very hard with one screen and I need several different things. So let's see, I will try. Appreciate your patience. Let's try this one. See if this works. And then
Yes.
from beginning, let's see. Okay, are you still seeing? Now I can't see my notes though. So that's frustrating. Apologies, technical difficulties, of course.
I
Let's
could
see if this will
share
work.
your slides if that would be helpful.
Let's do that. If you don't mind doing that, that'd be good.
Sure.
And that way I can still see my notes. Good thing I sent them to you. Thank you so much, Marisa.
Now I'm getting an error message.
Of course. Let me try to open it, the email that I sent you. Okay, let's try this way. I'm going to share this. Okay, can you see those slides? Should be a PDF.
Yes.
Perfect. And that's all you can see, right?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so thank you all for your patience this evening. As was mentioned, I'm Lola Torney. I'm a transportation planner with VTA. Tonight I'll be talking about our bicycle parking update. The chapter for bicycle parking is part of our bicycle technical guidelines. So as a background for you, the bicycle technical guidelines were written back in 2007. And so as you can imagine, best practices in bicycle parking has progressed since the document was written. Some chapters were updated in 2012, but not this one. And we've heard time and time again from member agency staff, from commissioners and developers for an update on the bike parking guidance, specifically asking for micromobility parking and information about bicycle storage rooms. So wanted to let you know, we have, as Stacy mentioned, brought this to our commissions and our committees and our working groups. So Stacy has seen this presentation already before. Sorry, Stacy. And we presented this back late last year. We incorporated our changes, and then the board of directors adopted the updated chapter in March. So a brief overview of the updates. We updated the bicycle parking recommendations by land use type table, and I'll get more into that as we later in the presentation. We replaced and added photos and new graphics, one of which you saw on the previous slide. We updated some local and international best practice examples, as well as some updated VTA guidance for bike lockers. We added information on micromobility parking, bike room requirements, and e-bike parking needs. We removed things like class 1 and class 2 and replaced with short-term and long-term. We moved away from that classification system because we found it's much easier for people to understand. And Caltrans, who originally started using that terminology, no longer uses it. So we're just going to follow their guidance on that. And I will say for this information for tonight, micromobility parking includes scooters and skateboards and sometimes e-bikes. So I want to make sure I clarify that. And so to dive in, we, as I mentioned, updated the bike parking supply recommendations by land use type. I know this is a very blurry picture, so we'll get it. I'll dive more into this. This is not the only one you're going to see. But this is a brief listing of all the research and resources we use to find, to update our numbers. And I'm happy to say VTA is one of the few agencies that provided this guidance, so we had to try to use as many local examples and more well-known national examples as we can find, but there aren't that many agencies or entities providing this information. So I'll start diving into our changes to the land use recommendations or recommendations by land use type. So the top table is the old one, and then the bottom one is the new table. And so as you can see, we split for residential use, for all of them, sorry, we split the table into short and long-term columns. And we combined all the residential into one recommendation and then increased into one general range. All of the recommendations now are shown in ranges. That was a request by a member agency, and we found it worked pretty well. It seemed pretty good and future-proof, which was our ultimate goal, which I know, Stacy, you were very adamant about. So we wanted to make sure we do that as well as possible. So this next one is the old table for schools, but we did break that out even further into the schools by type. And we increased for the range for short-term spaces. And all elementary, middle, and high schools are recommended to have their parking locked in secure areas during school hours. I want to be very clear. We do mention that a lot in the chapter. Next are just going to just start listing. We increased all of them, most or all of the different land use types. So we increased for recommended for parking garages, kept it around the same for transit centers. We find that for transit centers, some agencies have numbers, higher numbers that may adjust in the future, for example, Caltrain. And so since this is only guidance, we didn't want to preclude an agency from having their own requirements. And we did increase the recommendation for cultural and recreational uses, but also added in a separate category for government uses, since it wasn't clear where uses like city halls would fall under. So that we added that in as a request from a commissioner again. And we increased parking for all uses identified on this table, and we provided more detail for placement of short-term parking for office and office buildings. And again, we increased all the recommended for all of the ones on this table, and we may adjust the restaurant amount further in the future based on comments, but right now that it would be a few years before we go back to adjust any of the numbers again. And then again, all of the uses on here, industrial, daycare, others, we've increased it for all of the uses. So with that, I'll go ahead and take any questions.
Thank you very much, Lola, for taking time out of your evening and coming here to present this. I know you did fantastic work on this and took feedback from a lot of different people, often conflicting feedback, but did a really good job of getting these updated bike lines guidelines in place. I want to give the opportunity for commissioners to ask questions.
Yep. Do you want me to take my screen?
Sure, you can take your screen down. Yeah.
Perfect.
And if anybody needs it pulled back up, we can pull it back up.
Absolutely.
Any questions?
Hey, thanks, Lola. What is short-term? What is long-term?
Yeah, short-term, there is a description in the chapter. Short-term are considered more bike racks. Those are spaces that are typically used for 2 hours or less. Long-term could be bike rooms or bike lockers, or as things appear in the future and new parking for bikes become available that could fall under either of those, we would address it then, but those are usually spaces that are available or utilized for 2 or more hours.
And these guidelines become effective as of March then, effective immediately?
Yes, yep, they are effective as of now and backtrack in March. when
So
they were adopted
presumably
by the
then
board.
all new development projects now coming in front of us would have to follow these guidelines?
If that is your policy, then yes.
Oh, what? That's a good question. What is our policy?
Because it's just guidance for us, but as Marisa said, it is something that you utilize yourselves, and other cities in the county does as well. So that I'm leaving up to you.
That's a good question, Marissa. Is our policy to follow the VTA guidelines, or we have our own?
We follow the VTA guidelines.
Okay, so then they become effective immediately in that case, or we have to adopt them again for the second time.
Sorry, say that last part again.
And so once VTA guidelines get updated, do they automatically get adopted by Los Altos, or Los Altos has to re-update the policy to re-adopt the new set of guidelines?
Yeah, this is what I was kind of mentioning in the beginning. As far as I understand, since we already use the VTA bike guidelines, we continue using them. No action is required on our part. VTA updates them and we still use the updated version automatically.
Okay, and that, how does that apply then to projects in develop or at least in the pipeline? Do they have to adopt the new guidelines, or they have to take still while in the pipeline continue to be subject to the old guidelines?
In general, from what I understand, projects in the pipeline are required to use the requirements requirements that were in place at the start of the project.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners with questions? Go ahead, Commissioner or Vice Chair.
Thank you, Laura. That was useful. There's a lot of information packed in those slides. I'll have to spend some additional time outside to go through them, but it would be useful, I think, if you could characterize at a high level for people's benefit, what was the increase? How would you characterize the increase that you were sort of walking through all your slides? How would you characterize it?
For the most part, we tried to update it, increase by at least 50%. That was sort of what we saw being done at other agencies who are utilizing something like this. In some cases, it was a complete double. And some, like I mentioned, stayed the same and would just adhere to the local guidance. But for the most part, I would, if I'm remembering correctly, at least 50% increase for the ones that did increase.
Okay, and then if you were to again summarize, would your focus on the increase more on long-term, more so than the short-term parking? Or storage, I would say.
Yeah, I would say yes. We definitely tried to increase more but it does depend on the land use. So offices, more long-term, shopping centers, more short-term, because theoretically people who are going to a shopping center would probably spend less than 2 hours there, depending on the type of shopping center. Of course, grocery stores might be different from malls, and so on and so forth. So we try to factor that in and just sort of take a step back. Realistically, would more people who are visiting this area, this type of land use, need more short-term or long-term? Also trying to factor in employees as well. So for like shopping centers, we didn't want to count out people who work 8 hours at the grocery store and would be able to park their bike in a locker or a room or what have you, a longer term space.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the commission? And I'm going to open it up for public comments. Do any members of the public have comments or questions on this item? You may raise your hand or press *9 on your phone. I'm not seeing any public comments. Any final comments from the commission? Commissioner Ambiel is not here tonight. I want to thank Commissioner Ambiel. She tag team with me and we gave joint feedback to the VTA. So appreciate, Lola, that you looked at all of our extensive feedback.
It was great. Thank you. And all of this is available on our website. You can just Google VTA Bicycle Technical Guidelines and it'll come up to the VTA.org webpage for bicycling. And then you can find it on the side under more documents, something similar like to that. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And Commissioner Oyang?
I was just going to ask if, because I didn't see that presentation in our packet. So I was just wondering if it was going to be posted or if we can put a link to the site that Lola just shared.
And send out a link to the full set of guidelines.
Thank you. And that'll be good for the commissioners who are absent tonight to get that link. So thank you, Lola, for coming. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Lola.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Have a good evening.
You too.
So that brings us to item 5 on our agenda. We're in the discussion items category now. Item number 5 is Questa Drive. And we are, looks like we're back about on schedule. So that's great. So Marisa, I'm going to turn this over to you to introduce this item.
Thank you. So I'm going to try to share my screen again. When I tried a minute ago, I had an error message, and it looks like I have one again now.
Marisa, before you get started, I just want to say for the record, I want to accuse myself your conflict of interest. So please let me know when you're done with the item and I'll rejoin the meeting.
Thank you. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you,
let's
Vice
see.
Chair. And I also saw we have the city manager on while you're getting your screen set up. Marissa, maybe the city manager wants to say hello to
Yeah.
everyone. He isn't always at our meeting, so.
Hello, everyone. It's true. I'm just going to give the brief intro tonight and then turn it back over to Marisa. So we'll wait for her to get her screen up.
Thank you. Let's see. Nafis, if you are still on, would you mind opening the presentation and sharing it for me if you can?
Sure, Marissa. Shall I use the one in the folder, CSC folder?
Yes, Questa Drive updated.
Sorry, Gabe, go ahead.
I can wait for the PowerPoint to pop up. All right. So we've been talking about Questa for quite a while, both as the outreach phase before it was approved, and then through changes and after approval, and now again. So I don't think I'll say anything in this intro that the commission hasn't heard before, and a lot of it is probably in the presentation, but where we sit tonight on Questa, the current speed bumps we know are outside of any acceptable design traffic standard. We know that they're placed on an evacuation route. We know that they're placed on a primary fire response route. We know they haven't been permitted or approved by fire, which is a requirement. We also know that per fire guidelines, they don't want speed bumps on their primary response routes. So we know that currently the speed bumps in place in para-public safety response, because they're not approved or to an acceptable engineered standard, they put the city in a position of liability, and they reduce the safety for Los Altos residents. We know the impact of a regular speed bump reduces emergency medical response by about 9.52 seconds. With the 5 that we've placed on Questa, with their size, we can imagine that the emergency medical response is slowed even more than 9.52 seconds. So it makes medical care difficult during transit, and it makes just traversing Questa difficult. And it's led to some, I think, unintended outcomes of the actions of drivers who use that road on a regular basis. So moving forward, we know we brought options forward for the commission to consider tonight. Staff is recommending option A. It's the option that removes the current barriers from the road, installs a design selected by fire. It's the one that the fire has said they'll approve. And it will also reduce speeds without physically obstructing the road for emergency response. We say, even though there's options being presented tonight, removing the speed bumps on Questa is something the city has to do. So when Marisa goes through the options, you'll notice that we have removing the speed bumps that are in place as mandatory. If the commission prefers, staff can continue to work with fire on a different design for the speed bumps. But we do want to make clear again that the fire doesn't have to approve or permit any design on Questa, again, because due to their standards, speed bumps are not allowed on primary response routes. The design they prefer is the one that we're recommending tonight. It's the one that staff worked with fire on, and it's the one that fire said would least inhibit their emergency response. So with that brief intro, I'll turn it back over to Marisa, and then we'll all be available for questions.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Gabe. And Nafis, can you proceed to the next slide? So thank you everyone for joining us on this topic again. I am Marisa Lee. I'm the Transportation Services Manager for the City of Los Altos. If there are any residents in the audience that are joining the CSC meeting for the first time, this is a topic that we've discussed a lot. And so there has been a lot of background information and various, alternatives and decisions and modifications made to the existing speed tables, which I chose not to go over in great detail in this presentation, just for the sake of simplicity and for everyone's time. So if you are joining this conversation for the first time, just know that what we're going to kind of do tonight is show a snapshot of the current situation, which Gabe kind of already touched on a little bit. And then we're going to discuss the county fire requirements. And then we're going to talk about the different options that we have from this point moving forward, and obviously the staff recommendation. So if you are kind of new to this conversation and not up to date on all of the long history, all of that is available in the CSC website from previous staff reports. The staff report from May has a lot of background information. So our current situation is the following. As Gabe mentioned, the current speed tables that are in place on Questa Drive do exceed county's fire height requirement, which is 3 inches. So the speed tables that are there have to be removed, and they must be replaced. If they're going to be replaced, they have to be replaced with something that does not exceed the 3-inch maximum height. So everybody has worked hard and for a long time on these speed tables. I know there's been a lot of community outreach in the past. There's been a lot of CSC involvement. There's been council involvement. And so we all, certainly recognize that this is an unfortunate situation. This is not the outcome that we were hoping for with this project. And the purpose of tonight's meeting is to kind of, stand in the present and face towards the future. And we've been coordinating extensively with the fire department. We've brought this to the CSC multiple times, and we've been coordinating with the residents on Questa to just determine the most effective path moving forward. So the county fire requirements are the following. The standards state a maximum 3-inch height for speed tables, and compliance with the fire standard is mandatory. And the county fire requirements are consistent with other standards. So I have here a couple of examples. NACTO, which is the Association of Transportation Officials, that states a 3 to 3.5 inch suggested height, and Caltrans also states 3 to 4 inches. So what the county is asking of us is very reasonable and consistent with other standards. This is kind of a diagram of what the county fire has approved. So they've approved 3-inch high prefabricated speed tables. Some of the history for those joining us for the first time: prefabricated tables mean that the height will be consistent across the table. We won't have to worry about any, minor errors is even too strong of a word in construction, but just kind of, margin of error, which is natural in the construction process. We don't have to worry about that because of prefabricated speed tables are the regulation height, and regardless of, the rough terrain of the current roadway or the crowning of the road or any kind of field inconsistency, we know the tables will be 3 inches high. And the fire department has also approved this offset design, which we've talked about previously. So no other configurations have been approved by the fire department, and no other configurations have the support of the fire department. And as Gabe mentioned, this is a route that, according to the fire department, shouldn't really have speed tables in general. And so the fact that they've approved a configuration means that it's something that we would like to recommend. So the proposed treatments, this was detailed in the previous meeting, the meeting that happened in May. And we had a discussion and got feedback from all the commissioners and got a lot of feedback from the public as well. That was really insightful. And we incorporated the feedback that we received during the comment period and the previous Complete Streets Commission meeting in May. So one of the comments that we received was to narrow the speed table a little bit. It's prefabricated, so it comes in kind of standard widths. And we talked to the vendor of the materials to kind of come up with a custom configuration that would allow the width to just meet the edge of the roadway instead of the previous design was to extend just about a foot over that right-hand edge line, the white line on the right-hand side. So this configuration makes the design more bicycle friendly and pedestrian friendly because bikes and pedestrians who are traversing next to the speed table won't have that kind of 3D object in the middle of the shoulder, which is their path of travel. The other item that we kind of brought forth as an optional option last time was to include the delineator at the edge line. So that's also over on the right-hand side. And the idea there is to prevent vehicles from, swerving off to the right and into the bicycle pedestrian path of travel in order to, kind of avoid the speed table or get one wheel on and one wheel off. So that will be included at the request of the public and the feedback from the public during the last meeting. Another option that we presented last time and received support on was what we're calling a Hardin center line, or what is called a Hardin center line by us and others. And so that means a series of bots dots, which are those round kind of half spheres or semi-spheres that you see along the center of the roadway. You've probably seen them. They make a little kind of vibration when you drive over them. So we presented those as an option. They received a lot of support, and we actually got a request to use bigger dots. So that's something that we are going to use if we can. So a whole row of kind of bots dots down the center line. It would be in advance of the tables from each direction, and it would span the space in between the two offset tables. So there would be a period of dots down the center line for each table. Another public request that we got was the inclusion of a speed feedback sign somewhere in the middle of the corridor, kind of near the midpoint. So that's something that we have suggested as well. Speed feedback signs are recommended and a proven strategy or countermeasure to reduce speeding. And then finally, a stop sign at the intersection of Arboleda and Questa. Stop signs are, will force vehicles to stop at that kind of midpoint, which will bring down the speeds. Next slide, please. So that kind of wraps up the background, where we stand now, and the requirements from fire, and the kind of addressing of the comments that we received at the last CSC meeting. And so now we will move into options. So these are kind of the 3 options that we have identified as the options which we can discuss and choose to move forward with. So option A is kind of the more robust the more robust of the options. So option A includes the removal of the existing speed tables, which, as Gabe mentioned, is required. It will include the installation of the speed tables that we've been talking about. So that's the prefab, offset, split lane speed tables, and those are the ones that fire has approved. The installation of the tables would kind of come with these two subcategories that I just described, the installation of the Hardin center line with the box dots, and also the delineator on the edge line. And both of those are aimed at keeping vehicles from swerving one way or the other to miss the speed table. This option also includes the installation of the additional stop sign at Questa and Arboleda. And that'll slow vehicles to a stop at a midway point along the corridor, so it will bring down the overall speeds on the corridor. And then the installation of the speed feedback sign near the midpoint of the corridor, which was what was requested by the public. So I've included considerations for each of these options. I didn't want to break them out into pros and cons because I think that's subjective. So I just wanted to kind of put into each option some items to consider, some things to consider. So this particular option would result in no gap between the removal of the old tables and the installation of the new tables. So we would remove the tables and we would be able to install, remove the old tables, we'd be able to install the new tables in a timely fashion or even as part of the same construction project. This option provides the most thorough approach to traffic calming. It provides multiple different components to traffic calming. So there's the speed table, there is the stop sign, and there's the speed feedback sign, all of which will be effective in slowing vehicles. This design is bicycle and pedestrian friendly. And another consideration of this option is that it does require us to commit to this configuration during this meeting at this time. This option builds off of previous community outreach, which was very extensive, as we know, and the community members have been really involved, and so has the CSE. So this would build off all of that work that was done and move forward from there. So that is the summary of option A. I'll move on to option B. Option B is the same as option A, except that we could make some of the components optional. So again, this would consist of removing the existing tables, which is required. It would install the rubber offset split lane speed tables that Fire has approved. It would include the box dots on the center line and the delineator on the edge line to keep vehicles from swerving left or right. And in this option, I think we could discuss if we do want to move forward with the stop sign at Questa and Arboleda. And we could also discuss if we want to move forward with the speed feedback sign near the midpoint of the corridor, or if we want to remove one of those two last items. The idea of this option was to still move forward with the tables and just kind of flag the stop sign and the speed feedback sign as the optional elements. So there are some things to consider with this option as well. This option would also result in no gap between the removal of the existing tables and the installation of the new tables. So that transition could happen in a timely fashion or as part of the same construction project. This is a bicycle and pedestrian friendly design. It does slow the vehicles. It does have the consideration for bikes and peds traversing the shoulder area. This approach to traffic calming is less thorough because it only utilizes really one measure as opposed to the three listed in option A. So I'll give that a minute to sink in, and then I will move on with option C. Option C is the option that staff does not recommend at this point in time. Option C requires removal of the existing tables, as we've discussed, and option C is to not replace the speed tables at this time. So I think under this option, we could still consider the stop sign at Questa and Arboleda, and we could also consider the installation of the speed feedback sign, but this option would not replace the vertical element of the speed tables. This option comes with a number of considerations. So first of all, this option does not require us to make a decision tonight at this meeting regarding the type of speed table. This option is the least thorough approach to traffic calming of the three options that we're discussing. This option will likely not result in a substantial slowing of vehicles. So vehicles will slow down for the new stop sign that was already installed at Clark. If we decide to go with the option of the stop sign at Arboleda, they'll have to stop there. But those will kind of be the only 2 points and no other traffic calming devices. So this option will probably not result in a substantial slowing of vehicles, certainly not as substantial as the other two options. Under this option, there is, like Gabe mentioned in the beginning, the possibility of requesting approval of a different treatment with the fire department, and that would be a future conversation. The approval of a different treatment is certainly not guaranteed. We've been in contact with them for quite some time. We've talked, quite a bit. We've had a number of conversations, and up to this point in time, they haven't, expressed an interest in any other options. They haven't said, oh, there are multiple ways that we could go about this. They haven't given us any reason to think that other options will necessarily be approved. This option would result in a very long gap between the removal of the existing tables and the installation of any potential new table or feature. And that's if a new feature or table is possible. This option would require significant staff time and resources because it would be kind of starting from the beginning on renegotiating with the fire department. It would also take a lot of resident and commissioner time. Residents would need to be re-engaged. We'd have to bring this back to the commission, at least likely more than one more time. So this option doesn't take into account all the extensive community outreach that was done previously for this project. And I know the residents feel really invested in that time. So that's something to consider as well. So at this point, we will open it up to questions and discussion. Gabe and I can answer your questions. And the question at hand is, do we want to move forward with option A or B or C?
So thank you for this presentation. I just want to let everyone know the process from here now. First, we're going to have commissioners ask their questions. Then we will open it up for public comment. And members of the public, you absolutely may start raising your hand now. And then when we come to that portion, we'll have public comment. You can also raise your hand later when we come to the public comment section. Either way works. And then we will come back for commissioner discussion. And then we will go forward to look at picking one of these options and taking a vote. So first, let's open it to commissioner questions. Who would like to go first? I see Commissioner Maloof with your hand up.
Great, thank you, Chair, and thank you to Marissa and Gabe for your deep and infinite patience. This is a vexing problem. So please bear with me. I have a few questions that I'm sure you can help me with, at least some of them. So I've been racking my brains to find where the county publishes these evacuation routes, and I can't find them. Maybe you can help me. Where do I go to find them?
Could we stop the screen share? So just to clarify, the evacuation routes are published by the city. The city publishes them on our website. The county publishes their standards. I have their standards here. So you can see locations.
Yeah.
Speed hump, speed table should not be installed along a primary emergency response routes as determined.
Okay.
And then here's the publication of what at the time they determined was their primary emergency response routes.
Great.
Again, updated in October of 2021. all of this information is, as I understand it, publicly available. I didn't have
Great.
trouble discovering it.
Thank you. So it is conceivable then for the city to change the evacuation routes if we want to, right?
The city can change the evacuation route. The city cannot change a primary response route. Fire's concern is not our designation of evacuation. That's my concern, how we've designed or dedicated as evacuation routes.
Great.
Fire's concern is primary emergency response route, which is different.
Great, thanks. And those standards that you just showed me here, Gabe, are these standards throughout the whole county, or how do they apply? How are they applied?
So these would be standards for the cities, the Santa Clara County Fire Department services. So it's Santa Clara County, Campbell, Cupertino, Los Altos Hills, Los Gatos, Monte Sereno, and Saratoga.
Great. So presumably then if I go drive around some of those cities, I should find the same standards everywhere, right?
They should be the same standards everywhere.
Okay, all right. Let's see, page 1, 2, 3 of the report that you sent out, Marissa, underneath figure 2, it says that the staff has coordinated with the PD and is planning monitoring and enforcement of this project for a period following the installation. So the 2 points I want to understand here. First one is enforcement. I thought we couldn't enforce this thing. What has changed in the last few years?
We can enforce vehicles crossing the center line to avoid the speed table.
I see, but we cannot enforce the speed. We can only enforce crossing the double line.
I would have to have a more detailed conversation with Liz about this in order to fully understand.
Okay. So I think it'll be good. I would love to understand what enforcement really means. The second is enforcement for a period following installation. What does period mean? Is that a week, a year? What does it really mean?
The intention behind that, I apologize if the wording was vague, but the intention behind that was several months to even a year. I think when it's first installed, it'll take really, focused monitoring and enforcement. And then for the first, couple of months. And then after that, I think periodic enforcement would be appropriate.
Got it. If we now get into option A, what is the estimated impact on speed by putting those features of option A?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
What if we implement option A, all the features of option A, what is the projected or estimated impact on speed reduction?
So we don't have a projected target speed at this time. And I personally don't know that it's feasible to have a projected target speed for any project like this.
So how do we establish metrics of success? How do we know that this ultimately will lead to what we're trying to establish? This project, and I can spend a lot of time on it, dates back to 2011. So it's been over a decade right now. And we've been directed by City Council numerous times in the last decade to reduce speed. And that's always been the metric that's been tied to residential safety. How do we establish a goal that we can meet given option A, or whatever the option might be, but let's say option A is the first one.
So any option when you're looking at speed calming, you should not pick an artificial speed and try and slow traffic to that amount. So if council or commissions are giving direction to artificially reduce a speed to X amount, that doesn't necessarily have a corresponding increase in safety. So when we're looking at traffic calming measures, what we want to look at is how do we increase safety? So in this case, we would look at were there speed-related accidents or collisions prior to the installation of the speed humps, and were those reduced afterwards? That the primary thing we want to look at is not was traffic traveling at 28 and now it's traveling at 23 with a goal of 20. It is, did we have speed-related incidents prior to the speed humps? And if so, these incidents are related to speed, were they reduced, thereby increasing safety? So when we look at metrics moving forward, that's what we will be looking at.
Okay, let's keep going down that path. What were the accident rates in the last several years before the humps were put in?
So when we looked at the speed study before the humps were put in, we did not find a meaningful correlation between accidents and speed. In fairness, the data that was presented to the commission, if I remember reviewing it correctly about a year ago, showed total number of accidents on Questa in the area in question, but it did not go further to show which of those accidents were solely or likely due to speed.
Okay, so the data that was presented to the commission numerous times was speed data primarily. And it showed the 85th percentile to be well above 30 miles per hour, somewhere around 35 or 38 miles per hour. And my recollection, and I'm sure the notes would show that, the driver was how to reduce the speed because that was considered excessive and therefore unsafe.
Well,
Now,
and I agree that that's how it was presented. However, if you look at a roadway where the average 85th percentile speed is 35 miles per hour and you have no speed related incidents, then what you would want to do is adjust your speed limit to 35 miles per hour.
fair enough. So now you're telling me we shouldn't really give that data a lot of credence at this point for a number of reasons, and it's not correlated to safety. We should therefore consider different metrics. I haven't heard those metrics yet. What are those metrics?
Commissioner, we're actually not asking you to consider different metrics at this stage. We believe that the commission and the council have directed speed calming measures on Questa, and the city did significant outreach to those neighbors, and the neighbors successfully had speed bumps placed there. Whether or not those speed bumps should have been placed there, I think for tonight's conversations is probably not material. We're trying to honor the process that we went through. Now,
I'm going to beg to differ, Xavier. The process began a decade ago to ensure that the safety of the residents on Questa was enforced while balancing that with the utility of the street. And so now to sort of sit at this point and sort of say we should only honor the process of putting humps, neglects 10 years of discussions and project works. So I think we should, at this point, either assume that the metrics that we had in place years ago continue to be valid, or we think that different metrics have to apply and we need to really consider those new metrics. But we can't say we just have to replace the pumps with something that's different and ignore the initial objectives of this goal, of this project. And that's the guidance I want to get from the city. Which one do we want to pick?
Well, if the metric the commission wants to use is reducing speed to an artificial number, I would say that's not a good metric to use. Again, I would say when we talk about in your question, you talked about increasing safety. So again, metrics I would look at is, has there been significant or any number of speed related accidents in an area? And I would balance that with things like the need for emergency medical response not to be obstructed, the ability to give care to people that are traveling the roadway.
Fair enough.
Right now, regardless of whether we say the metrics were valid or not, the outcomes weren't balanced.
Great. So I think, when can we see what the objectives are? Those revised safety objectives, balancing the utility of the road and the safety requirements for the residents, of course, with the response time of the emergency vehicles. What are those metrics? What should we strive to target, and when can we see that?
So again, the metrics for public safety emergency response you're seeing tonight, right? They being fire, do not want a primary response route obstructed. They've showed us what the obstructions we've placed due to their emergency response times, and we've worked with them on a design that removes that obstacle. If the commission would like us to look at what the speed related accidents were and come up with a metric to reduce those, we are happy to do that. In that scenario, then the commission would want to choose option C tonight, where we remove the speed bumps and we don't replace them until the commission's had enough time to consider what is an acceptable metric for reducing speed related accidents.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Maloof, for your questions. Other commissioners, questions?
Yeah, I have a couple. So in your presentation, you showed the one where it looks like the new proposed configuration after where you have the split and the new rubber bumps are 10 feet wide in each lane. What's the length of those speed bumps? You're showing a car like maybe 20 feet, just, I know that's relative, but if you look at that, it's maybe 25 feet long. So what I'm wondering is, what's the length that we're proposing of these speed bumps, and what are they currently? And they seem to be different on Questa versus Everoli, the other street there. They seem to be two different lengths.
Different on Questa versus Arboleda?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Questa had a speed table treatment, Arboleda had speed bump treatment, so they are different lengths longitudinally down the street. The length of the speed table is the same as what we discussed in the last meeting, which I'm trying to pull up my notes on. I don't have it on the top of my head, but it's the same length as what we discussed last time. It was only the width that was narrowed.
Yeah, I wasn't, like I said, I was out of the countryside. I didn't see that meeting.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, because again, I actually drove those today and they did seem different. So I was just kind of curious as to what the actual lengths were.
Different between the two streets?
Yeah, and what they are proposed to be for when we put the new ones in on Questa.
So Arboleda received speed bumps, which is just one parabolic curve across the top, and Questa received speed tables, which have a flat top across the top, and they tend to be wider because of the kind of wheelbase of the car driving over it. So you want both wheels to be on the top surface of the speed table at one time. And what will be going in will be similar proportions to what's the existing speed tables that are on Questa, so similar length. But just obviously not as tall.
Okay. So I don't believe that is in that picture is gonna, like I said, the picture's showing to me like it's approximately 25 feet in length. I'm gonna guess that the ones that are currently there are a lot shorter.
The diagram is not to scale, it's just for
Right.
graphic purposes. I can find the length. I'll have to, I have the notes from the vendor and it's all the standard length. So it means that speed tables also have standards for all their dimensions. We've only been really talking about the height one for the last, handful of months.
Right.
But it's a standard length. I'll find it and I will send it to you.
Okay, thank you. You also talked about a delineator at the edge line. Do we have examples of what those actually look like?
We do. Let me pull up an image. Let's see, Nafis, if you could go to slide 17 in the presentation. So that's what it looks like. And I just found the note, the speed table is 21 feet long.
Okay. So the delineators, is that the vertical or is it just the paint on the road?
It's the vertical element.
Okay, thank you. And the, you talked about these bot dots and the fire, and so we're talking about one size, and then we're looking to put in bigger ones, tall ones, I guess. I assume that the fire department's okay, or police are okay with the taller, bigger dot bots.
The dots are suggested as part of the fire standards. So they're included in the standards. I don't think we've talked to them explicitly about the two different sizes yet. So that'll be a future conversation.
I thought that was in the presentation today. On the third page.
It was, yeah. So we received the feedback to go with a larger dot, and we've talked about it internally. And so we'll be talking about it with the fire department.
Okay, so the fire department's not aware of the bigger dots?
So there was a meeting between the city and fire, and Gabe, do you remember if the larger dots were discussed at that meeting?
So the answer they provided was actually included in their standards, and it was once approved options are made by the city, they will then consider and review that. And I think that's so they, even though they're happy to consult, I think they don't want to review every possible scenario that we would put in.
Okay, so you don't see any problem with that then going forward?
I wouldn't anticipate one, but again, the fire does have final approval.
Okay. Thank you. That's my questions. That's good.
Thank you. Commissioner Yang, any questions from you? And if I don't hear any questions, I'm going to assume you don't have any questions.
No, no questions.
Okay. And Commissioner Maloof, did I see you have another question?
Yes, Chair. I have actually two questions. The first one, can we hear any comments from the city staff on AB 43 and how would it impact this proposal here? Or might
Yes.
impact?
Sorry, what was that last part?
How would, or potentially, how would AB 43 impact this project?
Okay, so AB 43 is a California Assembly bill, and it was adopted last fall, and it will go into effect in June of 2024. So that's not next summer, but the summer after. So under AB 43, what would happen is cities would have the option to do an analysis and facilitate a policy discussion and approval to establish a safety corridor on a street. So in the past and present, there was the issue of the speed trap, where if you post a significantly lower speed limit than what's the prevailing speed, then it's considered a speed trap, and therefore it's not enforceable. So AB 43 would allow us to, like I said, do the analysis, have the policy discussion, have the approval, establish the safety corridor, and we can post a lower speed, and we would be able to enforce it.
So in principle, that would mean we can enforce the speed independent of what the actual measurements of the speed are.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. And the second question is, I'm fairly certain you've done quite a bit of community outreach with the residents on these three proposals. What did you hear from the residents, especially in view of options, in regard to options A and B?
We talked about the offset tables with the residents. They did at first have, kind of similar concerns to what we heard at the last CSC meeting, which was the concern that vehicles might swerve to miss the speed tables. We talked about the addition of the other elements, the Hardin center line and the delineator and the stop sign and the speed feedback sign. I think it was actually a resident on Questa that requested the speed feedback sign. And all of the additional measures led the residents to feel that the offset speed tables was the best option. And they were supportive of that option. The option C to remove the tables and to not replace with anything brought to the residents a lot of discomfort and pain. And they said they were disheartened by that option because of all of the involvement that they've had and time they've put in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So good questions from my fellow commissioners. Doesn't leave me too many left to ask. But Marissa, can you clarify on AB 43? My understanding is it can't be enforced until the earliest in mid 2024, but that it actually went into effect earlier this year, and that some cities are starting to do studies and adopt policies. So once it's enforceable, that they're able to immediately enforce it. Do you have clarification on that timeline?
I don't have clarification on the timeline. What I have is that it was adopted into law last fall, and that it will be implemented in the summer of 2024. So that's when it'll take effect. I would imagine that what you said is correct, that some of the legwork could be started earlier, and that we could kind of place our law regarding speed into effect in 2024.
And then my next question is, can you remind me of the pricing, or remind the commission of the pricing on these staggered speed bumps? And what's really behind this question is, could we consider these staggered bumps as a pilot project, for example?
I do think we have discussed this as a kind of pilot project in the past. So that is definitely still an option. I know there was concern about the speed, the noise of the vehicles going over the speed tables. And so the solution that we talked about in the past there was to not only bolt the tables down, which is standard, but to also kind of fix them with a glue, which I believe does make it a little bit harder to remove them. I have the information on the pricing. I will pull it up right now.
And while you're pulling up that pricing information, I'll just ask another question. When we first did this project, was a lot of discussion with the residents on the precise locations where these speed bumps went in. And sometimes they were shifted a little bit. So, they would be away from a driveway or not in front of somebody's picture window, or each resident had their own preference. With the staggered ones, there will be some new locations. Have the impacted residents, do they understand and are they aware of exactly where we're going to be putting the additional staggered or proposed staggered bump?
So I'm glad you asked, because I forgot to mention that we went out onto Questa, I think last week or possibly the week before, and we did a little spray paint marking of where the new tables would be. So half of each table would be located in the location where it's currently existing, and the other half would be offset. And so we marked the areas where the offset table would create a new area. And we have discussed this with the residents. We have not gone door to door, to my knowledge, but we have, or maybe we have, we've discussed it with the residents, and we would continue to be in contact with them.
Yeah. And then I'll just wait till you find that pricing information, approximate.
I might not be able to find it.
Okay, so maybe what we'll do is we'll open up public comments, and then if you happen to find it, then you can let us know after public comments. So what I'm going to do here for public comments is have people raise their hands or *9 on your phone. And then when I call on you, I'm just going to start at the top of the list. I will give each speaker 3 minutes, and that's up to 3 minutes. So you're welcome to use the whole 3 minutes, but you don't have to use the whole 3 minutes. So let us start with Polly and Nate, and you may optionally turn your video camera on if you want to while you're speaking to us, but you don't have to. So go ahead, Polly and Nate.
This is actually Polly. My name is Polly Siegel. I live on Madonna Way in Los Altos, and I am a bicycle commuter. I commute 5 days a week on Questa. And I've been doing that for a year. So I'm very familiar with the speed bumps, and I'm also very familiar with the safety issues for cyclists. And that's the big thing I want to address. In your presentation, you state that the design is bicycle and pedestrian friendly. but there are no plans at all to address the shoulder going south on Questa. And that shoulder is not to either bicycles or pedestrians, regardless of whether there are speed tables in there. And I'm really concerned that if you put in a delineator next to the speed table, there's really going to be no room at all to traverse on that road safely. So I would like to see if, there's a way to address the unevenness of the shoulder, the narrowness of the shoulder, and the fact that people park on that shoulder every single morning. So that's not addressed anywhere in this part of the project, I realize, but I think it's really important. And right now it's unsafe, and I have to take the road when I ride down the street. So that was my first thing. So I just wanted to make that point. The second question I have is that given that speed tables have been in place, I think for over a year, presumably that's reduced the speed. And so I'm just curious what the current measured speed is and why you can't enforce the speed limit now. I don't see people traveling over 25 miles an hour. So can't you enforce that now? And given what we learned about AB 43, I wonder why we're even doing this. If we'll be able to enforce the speed limit by ticketing people, why do we even need speed bumps? Because I would be in favor of option C, which is just get rid of them completely. And then finally, I'm concerned about adding another stop sign. I have to say that I used to be a law-abiding cyclist, but I'm no longer because of the stop signs on Questa, because there's no cars coming. And so if I basically treat them as yield signs, I treat them as though Governor Newsom never vetoed AB 122. And so my concern about adding another stop sign is, the effort to stop and start, the supply chain problems with disc brake pads and wearing out my disc brakes more quickly, the environmental impact of cars having to stop and speed up and use extra fuel. And so I really don't like adding extra stop signs as a measure. So that's it.
Thank you for your feedback, Polly. You were timed at exactly 3 minutes, and I forgot to tell our public speakers that you won't see a timer here on our screen, but I am timing you, so I would encourage you as well to keep an eye on the clock, and I will let you know when your 3 minutes is up.
Thank you.
Ron Shipper, you are ready to go.
Yes, thank you. And first, I'd like to thank the commission for taking note of my observation last time that the width of the speed tables was a little bit too wide. But I'm really glad to hear what Polly just said, because I'd like to reiterate some of those points. But even before I get to that, I'd like to say that the last meeting, one of the possible implementations was a split table, meaning a split table or split bump, allowing the emergency vehicles to go straight down the road. And considering the fact that Questa is such a narrow road, and I actually did look this afternoon at the studies in Beaverton and in Portland, where they did this kind of project. And one of the comments that was made that it was recommended for streets that are no narrower than 40 feet. And so in light of that, you've got really bad bike lane. You've got poor parking possibilities for Questa Drive residents, and you're adding this other obstacle. And I don't think that you're taking safety of residents into consideration. Plus, yes, of course, we know that it's illegal to drive on the other side of the road, but you're being very naive in believing that if you look at the delivery vans, you've got Amazon, you've got UPS, you've got FedEx, they all drive on the wrong side of the street to make deliveries. You really think that on those occasions when the police are going to be there, they'll be able to ticket them. Every other time, you're going to be getting new complaints from your residents. And I'm going to just leave that alone because I, like Polly, would agree with option C, because I think there are other options to implement what it is that you desire. But one of the more important things is to somehow make Questa safer along the edges, not just in the middle of the road. But the last thing that I'd like to mention, and it's because of the public safety issues, the school routes, et cetera, that was brought up, the intersection at Questa and Springer, there is absolutely no reason to have 3 lanes on the Los Altos side. 2 lanes would be sufficient. With 2 lanes, one coming out, one going in, you then have enough room for an adequate bike lane on each side. But like the way it is right now, that's not going to happen. And my 3 minutes are up, I can tell. So I would, I'd be more than happy to have a longer conversation, but those were my points.
Thank you, Mr. Schipper. Jeremy Wright.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. All right. Name's Jeremy Wright. I live at 631 Questa Drive. I've been a resident for over 20 years, and in that time, we've seen traffic and speeds increase. The Questa residents have worked long and hard with the city to get traffic calming on Questa Drive. The current speed tables are effective, as shown by the speed surveys. It's really disappointing the county fire is forcing removal of the speed tables. Having said that, Questa should not be left without effective traffic calming. So the residents would ask that removal of the current speed tables be concurrent with installation of other traffic calming measures, i.e. the lane split rubberized speed tables as described in options A and B of the staff memo. While not necessarily optimal and with several, as people have mentioned, possible drawbacks, the rubberized lane split speed tables are preferable to not having any traffic calming devices on Questa. They will achieve speed reductions, especially during peak traffic hours. As I've previously noted in statements, I was almost hit by an oncoming car as I backed out of my driveway. The neighbor estimated the speed of the car at 45 miles an hour. Hopefully the split lane speed tables will be a deterrent to this type of dangerous and flagrant speeding. The residents would also ask, and it's been mentioned before, that the lane split speed tables be coupled with increased police department presence and enforcement to deter motorists from zigzagging around the speed tables. I personally am in favor of option A, which includes the stop sign at Arboleda and the placement of the speed feedback signs. I would request that the residents and especially the immediate property owners be consulted on the placement of the signs. I would expect the signs to be effective in reducing speed, but they also have the potential to be intrusive if not properly placed. Additionally, I think this has been mentioned before, the effectiveness of the new traffic calming measures should be monitored with a report back to Questa residents and the CSC several months after installation, i.e. measuring speeds. If the effectiveness is not adequate, additional traffic calming measures should be considered. So in summary, I would request that the commission approve option A, indicate that the new traffic calming measures be installed concurrent with removal of the current speed tables, recommend enhanced police presence, and recommend consultation with the residents on the placement of the speed feedback signs. Thank you. And also a thank you to the city staff for working with the Questa residents.
Thank you, Jeremy Wright. Next up is Ying.
Hi, this is Ying. I am a resident on the Questa Street. First of all, I thank the city staff and the Complete Street Committee to spend your time on this effort. I would like to first state a fact of my investigation. There in an article published on August 18th, 2021 in Los Altos Town Crier, it actually says, Justin Stockman says Questa is not designated as a primary emergency response route by Santa Clara County Fire Department. This is an article about the Questa Drive traffic calming projects in 2021. I'll repeat it again, Questa is not designated as a primary emergency response route. Actually, I validated with the code. The code says that if it is indeed a primary emergency route, like we cannot really install the street bumps. And so I think we need to correct this fact and change our way of thinking according to the fact here. So I would also like to ask the fire department's role in here. I think I actually, in this article interview with the spokesperson for fire department, he didn't mention any complaints or violations explicitly. So I'm not sure whether we are addressing the problem because of formal complaint by the fire department, or there's some hypothesis that we're thinking about. If there is indeed a formal complaint, what is the deadline for making these changes? I think right now, since there's a mentioning about the metrics and the target, so it seems like we have not completely thought through the target or what can this new project achieve. So I'm not sure that we need to rush to make a changes, spending a lot of the taxpayers' dollar here. My next point is that I have serious concern about this offset hump design. I think it brings this very serious safety concern because this design is intended for fire trucks to swerve through when needed. But as a resident on the street, I witnessed many different driving behaviors, including driving on the opposite side of the road. I've seen many large trucks would try whatever they can to speed up and avoid, to speed up. So I think if a fire truck can swerve through, other big trucks can do the same too. Even worse situation would be this fancy design can attract some teenage drivers to have a race here who don't want to have some fancy racing on the street with some swirl speed design. My next point is this noisy rubber hump materials can be both subpar and expensive. I think it is indeed a convenience choice. Yeah, thank you. I'll just one sentence summarize. I would recommend, I don't think the current three options are meaningful, reasonable options to address the many questions. I would like to request a pause on this new projects and to really get to the bottom of several concerns and targets.
Next, thank you for your comments. Next up is Liang Dong.
Hello, my name is Liang. I also live on Questa Drive. First of all, I would like to appreciate the efforts of the commission and my neighbors. Thanks for making the street safer. I moved in before this project, and I have walked on Questa Drive for many times before and after this project. And it's quite obvious that the cars and trucks are much slower and the drivers are more aware of the surroundings. Well, which means the current speed tables are working as expected. Now, if I understand correctly, the very reason we have this meeting at all is some comments from County Fire Department, but I find it pretty totally absurd and unjustified. It doesn't make sense to me even to discuss this issue at all. Here are the reasons. If you look at the split lane design, which allows the emergency responders to drive around the speed table, you can ask the question, why does the height of the speed table matter at all if there's a way for emergency vehicles to drive around it? And if they are gonna run over it, why would they want a split design? So it seems to me the point of view here is inconsistent. And how are we supposed to address inconsistent concerns? And also, as Ying has pointed out, there are more inconsistency here. Questa Drive is not a primary response route. And I don't understand why the city staff keeps saying that it is. And they don't even mention that evacuation route is totally different from a primary emergency response route. And also, none of the options in today's meeting make sense to me at all. We don't even know whether the rubber tables will reduce the speed effectively. Also, there is going to be much more noise. And as a matter of fact, it feels to me that city staff is simply making invalid options like B, which is almost the same as option A here, just to push the commission making up a decision quickly. Can we ask for more due diligence here? There are many ways to reduce speed, like, you know, speed bumps, like what we have on Arboleda, or you know, like existing speed tables with lower heights, or you know, maybe building roundabouts. There are many options. I would recommend the commission not to pick any of the options here and request further discussion. Or, you know, as we may find out, we may not need to do anything at all to the current speed tables. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up is Mark O. And then for those of you who've already spoken, you're welcome to take your hands down after you speak. So Mark O, you will have 3 minutes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, super. Well, my name is Mark O'Reilly. I live on 338 Questa. It's right next to, I guess, the northernmost speed table. And so my comments are mostly related to what I see kind of in my specific area. Let me just say thank you for working through this. I know it's difficult, and I think it's definitely necessary. Traffic calming, I think, is very important on the street. Even with this table, the thing that I've noticed, cars heading north toward El Monte are going slow, but the cars that are heading south that have not hit a speed bump yet, that hit the one in front of my house, are typically going pretty fast. I'm actually really surprised how fast some of these cars are willing to go over the speed bump. I don't know if they don't see it or they just don't care. So the noise that I really get concerned about is cars bottoming out, which happens quite frequently. You can see that from just the road damage. And then also delivery cars go by and they bounce pretty loudly. So I think a stop sign at Arboleda makes a lot of sense. I'm assuming that cars would honor that a little bit more if they see it coming from further away. That makes a lot of sense to me. I did want to ask or get clarity that the speed table that's there, the one right before Arboleda, is going to get removed. I would appreciate that actually, because it's really noisy. I don't know if it's an option. It sounds like it's pretty late in the game, but you know, based on the amount of speed that cars are able to achieve by the time they get to this one, to me, it makes sense to do something that calms them a little further toward El Monte, something maybe before Shelby, somewhere there, some kind of a warning. That would be a recommendation for me, just living here. Yeah, so I think I like option A, all things considered. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Jim Nivenson.
Hi, this is Jim Nivenson. I'm also a resident of Questa Drive. I live at 395. There's a speed bump in front of us. My concerns with this are the split lane implementation. And when I'm seeing this, I just can't understand why we would want to build something that encourages people to drive on the wrong side of the road. And when people drive on the wrong side of the road, it results in head-on collisions at times. And I just think this is foolish to do this. Kind of building a game for young kids to drive and swerve around late at night. So I don't understand, if we're gonna have speed tables to slow down traffic, I don't understand why we can't have a speed table that goes all the way across the road, why we need this alternating pattern. You know, with regard to the fire department, it started off with, oh, I didn't know that we're supposed to talk to them about the speed bumps. And it's gotten to the point where everything in the world has to be approved by the fire department, and they're only gonna approve the split lane things. And I haven't heard anybody said that anybody's talked to them about having a speed bump going the full length across. In Mountain View, they have a speed bump on Questa, speed table on Questa. It goes across the entire length of the road. I know it's a different fire department, but it's the same escape road or whatever route we're talking about. It's the same public emergency route. So it just seems to me that of the three options that we presented here, we need another option. We need to look at, if we're going to do a speed bump still, if we're going to leave speed tables in here, we need to have them going all the way across. The split lane thing is asking for danger. And I'd like to see us acknowledge, not build something that we're going to regret in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Suresh Babu.
Hello, can you hear me? This is Suresh Babu.
Yes, we can hear you. 3 minutes.
Thank you. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I am also a resident on Questa, 482 Questa. I've been one of the long suffering residents, who watched, all these plans and finally, a solution materialize, and which we think actually is a model that the city should emulate, pretty widely. It has been successful. The goals of traffic calming were actually threefold. One is actually reduce not just the speed, but the volume, and also somehow figure out a way for traffic to be, taken away from these apps, and as a consequence of traffic calming, because, a lot of the apps basically dump extra traffic on that to basically also reduce the demand for going through this particular area. So it's been successful. So, actually, as somebody else mentioned, if you had the choice, we'd keep this one and figure out, what we can do to accommodate the fire department concern. Actually, the fire department's concern is an artificial one. I have been an infrastructure developer in the past, and this is a nationwide problem, and there is really no standard offered anywhere. The basic assumption is that the reduction in speed and the reduction in traffic actually enables fire trucks to go faster. So it's not just, it's an artificial concern to say, that the same times are going to be there. So that's one observation you should bring back to the fire department. If we don't have the choice of keeping the existing design, then I suggest that we go with, A, but like everyone else said, somehow ensure that people actually don't, swerve around these, the openings, which is very likely to happen. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak and present my views.
Thank you. Next is Tian Hui. I'm sorry if I've pronounced your name wrong.
That was great. Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Tian Hui. I'm a resident, live on Questa Drive for 425 Questa Drive as well, with my multi-generational growing family. I want to first express my appreciation of the Commission's effort and achievement on making Questa so much safer in the past couple of years by installing the speed tables, especially for kids and seniors. And it has been really sad and disappointing for us to hear that this pressure safety is at risk of being, taken away. So I think a few points I want to make. One, there's no clear reason to change the existing table. They have done the job well on reducing speed, and I think for any further changes, we really need solid proof. Like some neighbors pointed out, the concern of slowing down emergency personnel. It would be great to, almost necessary, to have really clear guideline and standard by the Santa Clara fire department. And I think just by common sense, having speed tables here is as reasonable as any other streets that currently have them. And number two is that replacing the speed table basically puts the improvements made so far at risk. So the benefit of existing speed table is backed by data on traffic speed. However, we do not have confidence in the replacement that can achieve the same result without regressing on residents' experience. So again, like many other pointed out, the split lane design is almost like an invitation for vehicles to soar in between, and that could be extremely dangerous for pedestrian. And also the rubber material is noisy, and there's not to mention this additional project is going to cost $500,000 taxpayer money. And the last point, but not least, is I think this kind of major zigzag decision making on important public issue can undermine public trust. It took years of effort to make this project happen, and we finally saw the great improvements. So if it's reasonable to have concerns over the imperfection of the existing project, but I think the approach to address those concerns should be incremental changes and fixes on existing infrastructure rather than immediate and rather immature overhaul. So, for example, the speed table can be trimmed lower rather than just like a straight replacement. So that's my point. I think overall for the 3 given options, I do not think that's even like close to an exhaustive list of options we have. So I would highly.
You may finish your sentence, but I'm sorry, your time is up.
Okay, yeah, I would like to see more options with consideration of above concerns. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Jeannie Kawaji.
Perfect. Yes.
Oh, I was going to say you may restate your name, but okay, I got it.
My name is Jeannie Kawaji, and I live on Harrington Avenue, which is a couple streets away from Questa. And I know so many people on Questa, and you have so many constituents to satisfy with very different interests. And I so appreciate everybody's thoughtful collaboration. But I do have a couple of questions. One is, could we actually check the whether the enforcement can now happen for speeding? I know that was not possible 6 months ago, but has this pilot reduced the speed sufficiently to be able to legally give tickets? Can we check the emergency route and try to follow the law on that? Because that's unclear to me. And if that requires getting the collaboration of the fire and medical staff, I think that's not a waste of time. And what about, has there been increased traffic on the side streets for people like me who would much prefer to go over much lower bumps than the higher bumps for car damage? Have we assessed that? In general, I just wanted to thank everyone, and option C is what I would endorse. And I'm wondering if we could eliminate the current tables, which are very high, if there's a cost advantage to delaying what we then replace it with, or is there a cost advantage to replacing it immediately with another lower hump? That wasn't clear to me in your options, what the cost was for a delayed second try. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. And I know you had some questions in there, and I think some other residents did as well. And I am going to give the opportunity to our staff team on the call tonight to, once all the public comments are done, to respond to any questions or comments that have come up.
Thank you.
Next is Dan Cohen. Dan.
Hi. First, I wanted to correct a couple of comments I've heard about whether Questa is an evacuation route. Anybody can do a Google search, find on the Los Altos website, there's a document that goes all the way back to 2005, where it was designated an evacuation route. That document actually said that evacuation routes should not have speed bumps at all. So that is the main route that people are going to take that live near Questa in an emergency. Secondly, from a safety standpoint, it's also the primary route for emergency vehicles because it's the fastest route. We can tell them to go on El Camino and have them take 5 minutes longer to reach somebody's house, but that really makes no sense. They're taking the fastest route. That's the main thoroughfare across that side of Los Altos. Thirdly, I want to remind people that the city survey data found that these bumps are up to 7.5 inches. They're ridiculously high. Yes, there was a process, and the process was not to put 7.5 inches. That was not what was agreed to by the community. It was a mistake that should be rectified. I want to remind the commission that last year I presented you a petition with over 700 signatures from Los Altos residents. Today we have mostly people living on Questa. So we're getting a little bit of a one-sided view of things, but that petition asked you to eliminate or lower the bumps because they were not what was agreed to, and for all the reasons we've talked about. Option A is really a compromise then. I think most residents would prefer nothing at all. It seems like a reasonable compromise that takes into account the needs of and desires of people on the street and the other issues. If people don't want to go that way, we can look at the impact of, we've added a stop sign, we're adding another stop sign, we can do other traffic calming measures, essentially option C. But I think those are the two options that we need to pursue. And a lot of mistakes were made and it needs to be corrected and soon. It's been 2 years. We just need to move forward and correct this mistake. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan Cohen, for your comments. Next is Jaya. Jaya, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Jaya Kamath, and I live on 482 Questa Drive. And I have worked with a number of residents on the street for numerous years to get where we are with traffic calming on Questa. We have worked diligently with the city staff. We have attended city council meetings. We have attended all the commission meetings to get where we are. And I agree now that, these humps are too large. There is an issue with the fire department. And I'm really glad the city staff worked with us, again, the residents, to come up with this new solution. And I wholeheartedly support option A as the best solution we have moving forward. Granted, it has flaws, and we need to look at it like any other thing. Enforcement will be required. And also we have to make sure there's no meandering and swerving of vehicles, especially in the night and with teenagers. I don't know how that we can avoid those things, but this is something the city really has to stand by the residents to make the street safe, not only for us, but for every resident that uses the street. So I think this is, I'm wholeheartedly supportive of option A right now, and I will stand by with the city staff to make this happen. And thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jaya, for your comments tonight. Next is Mike Trainer.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great, thank you. Thanks again for the work that the commission does. I know it's long and challenging. I appreciate it. My point is, well, I can understand the desire of the Questa residents to sort of maintain the current status quo with the speed tables. The tables are just too high. I think there's been a lot of agreement with that. And I feel like since we have been working on this for at least 2 and maybe as many as 10 years, I just urge the commission to move on with option A and do it with expediency. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next, Vivian Wildman.
Hello. So it's a little unsettling to hear this has been going on 10 years, and I don't think we want to be talking about it for another 10. I think we can't ignore the safety and the emergency vehicles and the liability for the city, which is even more now because we know that we're out of compliance with what should be there. And as has been stated before, these are a mistake. They're too high. For whatever reason, they were supposed to be 3 to 3.5 inches. That is the rule for speed bumps everywhere. You won't find these 7-8 inch speed bumps. And that's probably why whoever on Questa says it's so noisy and people bottom out. No one expects them to be that high when they go over them. And some cars cannot go over them without damaging the cars. I think A is a compromise. I'm concerned about the bike safety. I'm not sure the delineators will be helpful for either bikes, and I don't know enough about it, but I think we do want bikes to be able to go on that street both ways. The stop sign at Arboleda, that's a way into a park and a school, and I think, I don't know how this could have been done without a cross, I don't know if there's a crosswalk there, but stop sign for sure, that's just for safety. And in the future, I think we could just lower the speed limit and try to, you know, have police monitor it more. I think we either need to compromise, go with A, or if we want to look into things more, it needs to be C. We take them out and then look into different solutions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And to members of the public, if you've already spoken, you may lower your hand. And for anyone who has already spoken, there's one opportunity to get 3 minutes to speak tonight. There's not 2 opportunities, but if you're sitting next to someone and they haven't spoken and they want to speak, then you may raise your hand again. But that's sort of our rules of public comments here. So not seeing any more hands up for public comments, I'm going to bring it back. First, I want to give staff, Marissa and Gabe is here, to respond to any of the questions or comments or anything that came up during the public comment period. And then after that, we'll come back to the commission to have our deliberation.
Thank you, Chair. I tried to put the comments just kind of into buckets. So if there's one that I don't address and the commission wants us to, we're happy to. So on the comments around design, there are accepted designs for speed humps. The fire department has their accepted designs here. All fire departments do, most cities do. Ours currently don't comply with any type of standard, and they're not permitted. So they need to be removed.
Says about the residents.
Sorry, I'll just pause the meeting for a minute. Can you mute your mics if you're speaking? Okay. So when you're not speaking, it's good to mute your mics, everyone. Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, no trouble. So we need to remove the current ones. We can replace them with speed humps that are proposed tonight and meet the design. We're also happy if the commission wants us to keep working with fire on a different design. We're happy to keep doing that. The primary takeaway is tonight the speed humps we have need to be removed. We heard a lot about how speed bumps slow down cars, which is true. We don't tend to take into account the other vehicles, scooters, e-bikes, mopeds. These generally have a hard time crossing over speed humps, particularly with the height that we've installed today. We looked at the split design with fire or the 3 humps. I'm familiar with those from deployment in Southern California. The standards that we have up here, the gap between the humps that fire submitted to us is so wide that almost any car could just simply drive, a regular off-the-lot car could drive through them just by lining it up. Typically, fire departments will set these humps around their larger apparatus that you can line them up, but a smaller car couldn't. For whatever reason, the design specifications we were given when we did the measurement, most cars could simply drive through them. So if the commission wanted us to look at the humps or the tri-humps, then we would have to go back to fire and ask them to amend their standards, which they may be amenable to. They probably hadn't considered that when they looked at all their wheelbases. Some of their wheelbases are the same as off-the-lot cars. We had a question on if there is a benefit to replacing with removal. So removal of the speed bumps is going to happen as part of our streets project. That'll happen. We'll bid it and it'll all happen together. And installation is also going to happen as part of our street project. So if the commission says option A tonight, then removal and replacement will happen at the same time as part of our street pavement process, which happens every year. If removal happens, the vote is C and removal takes place, but there's more work. It will be no earlier than next year's street project when there's an installation. one of the things we hear a lot is the weaving. You know, all speed humps, one of the things we talk about, there's not a speed hump design that doesn't cause an unintended consequence. If you do the humps, will cars try and line themselves up? I think that's likely. The speed bumps we have now, Questa is actually my cross street. So I'm familiar with watching people drive on the shoulder of the road and in driveways to avoid what we have. I'm certain that wasn't the intention, but again, any design, when you look at it, is going to have unintended consequences. Anytime you obstruct a roadway, people are going to try and avoid that obstruction. So the last one that I have as a bucket is why we can't shave it down. So we actually had an engineer look at that, and they said due to how it was installed, we can't actually just shave the 4.5 inches or whatever it is across the top and form it. They said that we have to remove it completely and then design it again. But because of the way Questa is built, we don't think anything other than rubber would give us the uniform pattern. So that's how we got to the recommendation tonight. And those are the 6 buckets I have. I don't know if Marisa had caught any additional or if the commission did, but we're happy to try and answer them.
Thank you, Gabe. That was helpful. I had a lot of those same comments written down. I had one, I think, additional one, which was regarding enforcement and why have the tables if we can just enforce the speed. And there are a bunch of issues there that we have discussed at previous meetings, one of which is the police department is finite and they have a lot of obligations and a lot of things to enforce. So they can't always be available to consistently enforce. And another question was about the kind of prevailing speed versus the speed limit versus what can we enforce there. So, you know, prior to this project, the prevailing speed was, you know, what it was, a certain speed. And then after the installation of this project, it's been significantly lower, as we've discussed. And if we were to kind of go back to the prevailing speed, we can't use the prevailing speed of the current condition with the speed tables installed. We would have to use the prevailing speed of the, you know, standard condition with no speed tables. When I did talk to Liz about this last week, she did mention that if we raise the speed limit just 5 miles an hour on Questa, we could enforce the speed because then it would be within the necessary guidelines or the range that's necessary in order to be able to enforce without the speed trap. I also know somebody mentioned the state legislation that we talked about before. And like we discussed, that doesn't go into effect for 2 more years. So that's why we can't rely on that right now.
Okay, thank you, Gabe and Marisa, for those response and information to what we've heard in public comments. So as we move into commissioner deliberations, I just want to clarify, Marisa, if you can help me with the process. We have 4 of 7 commissioners here now for this item. For a vote, do we need a majority of the entire commission, which would be 4, to pass something? Or do we need a majority of the present members, which would be 3, to pass something?
Gabe, do you have that info?
I'm texting the city attorney right now.
Okay, that would be great. And I see my former chair, Commissioner Maloof, saying we need 4 of us to say yes. And that's what I think it is too. And that's why I asked the question. And I don't know if we have our city council liaison on tonight. If
Hi, Chair. Yes, I'm here. And I agree with Commissioner Maloof. You need 4 votes in order to take action.
I think so too. So Gabe, if you hear from the city attorney, let us know, but I think we're operating on the assumption that it takes 4 of us and there's 3 of us that think that. So
I'm 99% certain that's correct. I'll get a response from her though.
Okay, great. Thank you. So commissioners, who would like to start our discussion? Go ahead.
All right. Again, thank you all for this conversation. And I want to really thank the residents for sharing their thoughts tonight. what is in front of us is a question of what to do once we remove those bumps. And that is essentially boils down to a balance between the requirements for the emergency vehicles, and that's been quantified very well by the city manager, 9.52 seconds or less, and the safety of the residents. And I think that's where my frustration had been in the past, because for the last 10 years, we were told by the city that the safety of the residents was quantified by a measure of the speed. And I think that goalpost today has changed, and it's a different metric, which I don't know what it is. And so I am inclined to support option A. I think we've seen significant support in the community and the residents for option A, and I'm inclined to support that, subject to some conditions perhaps, or subject to some additions to it. The first one is, from a very tactical standpoint, understand and consult with the residents on the placement. Take into account also how do you facilitate the movement of bicycles and pedestrians, not just simply vehicles, cars. And also a more firm commitment from the PD on enforcement. I think sort of it was very vague in the text in there. I would hope that there's something more firm in terms of enforcing crossing the double yellow line. I understand we cannot enforce the speed yet, but we certainly can enforce the crossing the double yellow line. And then also establish some metrics. I don't know what those metrics are. I think the city should come back to this commission and sort of say, here's what the metrics should be. If it's not speed, if it's accident, then so be it. Whatever that should be, we need to know what it is and begin to measure the progress of this project against those metrics and not leave it in a very subjective fashion. I understand it is difficult to project forward these complex projects, but it is also a matter of setting targets. And I'm an engineer by training, all of us are, many of us are. And if we do not set targets, then we're failing miserably. And so I would challenge the city to come back and sort of set goals as to what those metrics should be. I don't believe this project ends with option A. I think we should come back and keep measuring. And the first thing we need to do is come back and maybe late this year or perhaps 2023, as soon as the project is completed, and do another speed survey and sort of say, here's what we think the numbers are going to look like now once that survey is completed. And then reassess and sort of say, yeah, we've made some progress, or we don't think we made enough progress. We have 2 years in front of us before we begin to enforce AB 43. And the question becomes, if the project is successful as it is today, option A in particular, then that's great. We can sort of say, hey, that was good. But if we find that actually the project did not meet all its stated objectives, then we can put in place some of the policies required to initiate AB 43 as soon as June of 2024. And so these are the things that I would love to sort of see the city come back with. It's not just option A, but option A with more stuff that allows us to be on top of this project. I think we owe the residents a solution, at least however partial it may be today. It's been over 10 years, and to come back and take option C and then punt, I find it to be irresponsible. So option A is the best that we have in front of us, and for us to stay committed to what more can we do if option A does not meet the stated objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Maloof. Other commissioners? Tom, Cindy, anything to say? If not, that's okay. I am not hearing anything, so
I'll go.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I do, I think the short answer is I would agree with Commissioner Maloof that option A, while not the most ideal, is the best option that we have right now to honor, all of the progress that we've made so far, and also incorporate all of the great feedback and input that the community has given so far. I do appreciate City Manager's comment around safety being the primary objective. And, I think that it was always about safety. Traffic calming was a proxy, or speed was a proxy for measuring whether or not the street was safe or not. And maybe that's not the right proxy. But I agree that we should find what it is we want to measure the success of this project or this version of the project, so that we can come back and evaluate whether or not it was effective. So I'm a little bit cautious and wary of this approach because it's new. There's a lot of concerns around behavior that's unintended. So we should keep a close eye on that and be able to report back and decide whether or not we need to make any further changes. And thank you for everyone's work on this. And Marisa, it sounds like you've done a lot of legwork and due diligence to come back to the commission with this proposal. So thank you.
Tom, did you have anything to add?
Nothing really to add, just to enforce what they're saying, that thank the city employees for their work, and all the city residents. It's quite a diversity of opinions, and we appreciate all the feedback. But I'm also inclined to go with option A as the best choice going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also echo the comments of my fellow commissioners, and without rehashing them, simply say that, like the residents, I'm concerned about weaving around the staggered bumps. And I think we certainly need to have keen observation and enforcement, as well as coming back and giving this commission an update. I do also want to say, in the bigger picture, is not just Questa alone, but I do think speed is a concern for residents of this city on many of our streets. And we don't want to have collisions happen. And I think keeping speed in control is important. I think that's why the new state law was passed, because the 85th percentile rule was allowing speeds to climb. And I do think the city and the commission should take a look at AB 43, not just with respect to Questa, but with respect to other streets in the city. And I don't think we should wait till you can enforce AB 43. I think we should start working like some other jurisdictions are now to find what we want our policy to be for this, with respect not only to Questa, but throughout the city. In addition, I would add to Commissioner Malouf's comments, talking about the movement and bicycle and pedestrians. Absolutely, that's a concern. And I would echo with what one of the residents brought up this evening at the corner of Questa and Springer. Rather than have, as you head from Questa towards Springer, there's a right turn lane for vehicles and a straight ahead lane, or it can also be used as a left turn lane. And it pretty much eliminates all space, the small space that bicycles had left there. And I would encourage the city to, as that resident suggested, preserve that space and make that space for bicyclists so they are safe there, not give priority to exclusively vehicles. The city can look at the volume of vehicles going there, but I can't imagine that that's going to cause a significant reduction in level of service for vehicles. I think that's all we have. So if nobody else if nobody else wants to add anything, and there you are.
I just want to confirm the city attorney says 4 required and gives kudos to everyone who knew the answer to that.
Tell Jolie, thank you for responding so quickly.
I will do that.
Yeah, thank you. So with that, would someone like to make the motion?
I will move to adopt option A as stated by the city staff, with the condition of establishing a safety metric and goal for the Questa corridor to be defined and stated by the city itself. And a strong recommendation to consult with the residents on placements and to look into improving bike and pedestrian safety. Not a precondition, but a recommendation.
And I'll second that.
So thank you, Commissioner Maloof, for the motion and Commissioner Snyder for the second. Let's do a vote, and I'm going to do a roll call for this item. So I'm going to call you as I see you. Commissioner Maloof.
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder.
Option A, yes.
And are you saying also yes to the motion in the second?
Yes.
Okay, great. And Commissioner Yang.
Yes.
And myself, yes. So that motion passes 4-0. So thank everyone who came for this item tonight. We are done with this item. For those of you who came for Questa, you don't need to stick around for the rest of our meeting, but you're most certainly welcome and invited too. So for everyone who's remaining, let us move on to item number 6. I'm just going to do a time check. I think we probably need, do we need a 5-minute bathroom break? No, anybody? Cindy, Tom? I'm not seeing anyone. Okay, let's keep plowing through. Let's move to item number 6 then, which is the meetings for June and July. Marisa, I know this was a sort of staff-driven item, so I'll turn straight over to you.
Thank you. So this item is something that has been discussed internally and also with the chair and vice chair of the commission. This is to, as the staff report kind of said, this is to align with city council, who takes a summer break from meetings. And as I kind of outlined in the staff report, staff thinks it would be, beneficial to have a month off during the summer. For one, as we've seen, it's quite hard to get quorum during the summer months because especially now that, COVID is, quote unquote ending, people are traveling more. Also staff feels it would be really helpful to have a break from meetings so that we can kind of get some progress made on the back end of projects. So that's the substantive work that goes into all these presentations that we give to you. As I mentioned in the report, a lot of time and effort and energy goes into just the preparation of the presentations and the staff reports and the managing of the logistics of the meetings, especially lately with all the absences. So that takes up a lot of time and energy and resource. And we thought it would be nice to kind of have a 1-month break from that in order to make more progress on the meat of the projects that we're working on and come back to you refreshed and with some more substantive things to present. So we thought this could also give commissioners a chance to take a break also and refresh. It could give kind of a consolidated break. So if everybody kind of knows, all the commissioners know that, we don't meet in July or whatever month we choose, maybe that's a good time to kind of plan a vacation or a time away. That could give commissioners a time to also come back refreshed to their duties. So I outlined 2 options in the staff report. So I think those would be valuable to discuss. One would be to determine a month that we know we will always have off every summer. And so we could choose, I think it would be the July meeting that would be consistent with city council, or we could choose June or August, depending on, our needs. So that's one option. And we would just have that same month off every year. The other option would be something that is modeled after the BPAC for the VTA, which is that we have a couple of months, 2 or 3 months that are listed as kind of optional months. And then based on pressing items and based on workload and based on, a RSVPs in advance from commissioners of who will be able to attend what meeting, we kind of pull all those factors together and staff chooses 1 meeting of the 3 that will be not held.
So Marisa, sorry to interrupt you. I maybe had given you the misimpression. So the VTA BPAC meets one of those months, and then the second month is optional if there is pressing business. And then it's decided between the staff liaison and the chair largely if it goes forward to have a meeting. It's easier to get a quorum there than it is for us, but what we discovered we met in June as a regular meeting. In July, we met because we had pressing business. If you have a study session, you don't need a quorum. So we actually met and our meeting didn't start with a quorum, but then we got a quorum as the meeting went along. So sorry to add that clarity, but the point is one meeting is required. The second meeting happens only if there's pressing business.
Okay, so it sounds like a really subtle difference between what I was saying, which is that instead of the meeting kind of being anticipated, but then canceled if not needed, the meeting is anticipated to not happen unless we really need it.
Yeah, that's generally correct.
Okay. So in the staff report, I think I opened it up to, June, July, and August for both options. And there are some pros and cons that are outlined there as well. I know I mentioned that one of the options, option one, would make it a little bit easier for everyone to plan in ahead, but based on what Stacy just mentioned, maybe that's not the case. Stacy, could you speak to that?
I think if you pick a standing month, people could commissioners would certainly know that month would be off. I think when we get to the discussion, I think individual commissioners can make comments on that. I have my own personal comments on that.
Okay, so yeah, so I think for option one, which is to establish one summer month as the annual month when the CSC meeting will not be held. And that would be a little bit easier for everyone to plan in advance, right? So commissioners could know when they were going to have meetings and when they were not going to have meetings, and they could know that well in advance and plan around it. And staff could also know in advance and plan the meetings around that. And then the second option does provide, I think, a little bit more flexibility based on kind of the pressing items and the quorum and the workload. But on the flip side, it does kind of require commissioners to give an RSVP to summer meetings, in advance, which might not be possible. Our plans could, change as time goes on. And then it does make it a little bit harder for everyone to kind of plan ahead and count on a time that we won't meet. So as far as the discussion, the questions at hand are: one, is this something that we're interested in exploring at all? Or do we want to keep meeting through the summer? Again, the staff recommendation is to take a break so that we can catch up on the workload. And then the question number two for you is, which of these two options would we like to employ?
Okay, so thank you, Marissa, for presenting this item. And I know commissioners are ready to comment and discuss and question, but I'm actually going to do public comments. So we give members of the public an opportunity to speak on this item. So anyone from the public, if you would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand or *9 on the phone. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on this item? I'm not seeing anyone, so let's close public comments on this item. And now let's come to the commissioners. And Nadeem, I saw you with your hand up.
Yeah, I'm going to take just 5 seconds. Keep it simple. Just take 1 month off. We already merged the November and December meetings. So that would basically mean 10 meetings per year. And if we take July off, that's fine. I think that people know how to schedule their vacations that way.
Other commissioners with comments or questions? Tom, was that your hand or not?
No, I don't really have any hard choices one way or the other, but if it helps the city, take some load off and catch up on things, I'm all for that too.
Yeah. So I think, Suresh.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm generally supportive of the idea. I think it makes sense. The question I had was really the timing. Typically the school year ends sometime in the early part of the June, and since we meet always the last week of the month, it might make sense to take the June date, month off, and then wait till and have the July, because it's the end of the July meeting. I'm just trying to throw out an idea there. So that might be a consideration. I don't know what the what the experience has been in the past. Maybe we'll learn a little bit more as to when typically commissioners and staff take time off. So that might help make the decision. I know my gut feel says that that would be the case, that people are off typically that June, June is a month that people would want to take off or kind of have downtime. Anyway, so that's my comment.
And Cindy, any comments?
Yeah, I was just going to say that it might make sense to align it with the city council's schedule, just so that, if they're out if we needed to meet or bring something to their attention, and if we're off on different months, then it could be a longer stretch before we can get something completed. But that was the only consideration.
So feedback from my end, Marissa, I would say it's definitely not August, because by the end of August, the school year has started. And for those of us with kids, we're here. For June and July, I think that it sounds like some commissioners are going to be able to plan around the CSC schedule when they're here or not. And I think we're going to find that some commissioners are not able to solely plan around that. So for example, I'm not going to be able to plan my summer vacation solely around the CSC, because there's other people in my house and they have other very complicated schedules. So my concern, if we make 1 month just off, is that we may end up with no meeting for a period of a couple months. We may 1 month not have a quorum and another month not have a meeting because it was off. So that's my concern. And so I like the VTA model, because where we mark one as optional and it's pressing, certainly staff should take vacation or do whatever they need. But if we missed 1 month because we don't have a quorum and we have some pressing business and you want to bring that to us, I would hesitate for us to, decide today that can't happen. That's the feedback I have. Nadeem?
If I may suggest for the chair and the vice chair and the city staff to figure that out and tell the rest of the commission what you think is appropriate.
Does that work? Does Commissioner Malouf's suggestion work for everyone? You just nod your head if it does. I think I'm seeing some heads nodding yes. So Marissa, I think that's a good suggestion. And I think items like this, it would be great if you bring these to the chair and the vice chair first, before they hit the agenda packet the first time. So without anything else on this item, let's move on to the staff updates section of the agenda.
All right, I'm going to pull up my notes. Okay, I have a number of updates for you. So first, I want to let everybody know that we did lose a member of our team. Gaku has left us and he has moved on to his next opportunity with the city of Sunnyvale, so he's not too far away. We heard from him once or twice since he left. He did reach out to check in and say hello, so he's doing well so far. So our team is down to just Nafis and myself, and Jaime is still obviously consulting a little bit. So we are down a staff member. We'll be advertising for the position as soon as we can in the next couple of weeks. And we'll keep you updated there. Anybody has any questions, let me know. We have also hired a couple of new people, not in the transportation division, but in the public works department. We also had a little bit of a structural reorganization internally. So what used to be called the engineering department is now called the public works department. So there's been some reshuffling there. We've had 2 new hires, and those hires have been to refill the position that was left empty by David Breeze when he retired. So that position was broken into 2, and we hired 2 new people. One is David Fish, who will be leading the streetscape project on First. And the other is Morgan. I forget how to pronounce his last name at the moment, and he will be leading the street resurfacing project that'll be going to construction soon. So hopefully you will get to interface with them soon. Shifting gears, the city of Los Altos was awarded as part of the Beacon program. We just received notice about this in the last couple of weeks. And so basically the Beacon program is a program for data sharing and collaboration between cities and sharing of best practices relating to climate change and emissions reductions and sustainability, energy savings, and meeting aggressive state standards for climate change. So Gabe wanted us to share that with you. That's a positive move for the city moving forward. Shifting gears again back to Los Altos High School. We have been working still with Galen, and who's the principal, and Andrean, who's our Safe Routes to School consultant. We've been developing materials for return to school, so messaging for parents, and it's going to be kind of a joint consolidated effort. Galen's preparing materials kind of from the school end. I'll be preparing a letter for to be included in the packet that goes out to parents and students. So kind of just stating that, you know, the city and the school have been working together and kind of describing all of the expectations that we've all discussed around drop off and the routes through the school area, and also announcing the loading zone on Hardin. So the plan that I showed you a couple of months ago, I think it was now, was kind of that elaborate drop off with the protected bike lane. We did go ahead and submit the ATP application for that project. We won't hear back for a couple of months. We also have that plan or design as a alternative item in our street resurfacing project that will be constructed this summer. So an alternative item means that if we have extra money, kind of after all the other projects have been done, all the paving and the restriping, then we'll go ahead and implement that one. And if we don't have the funds remaining, then we won't. So in the interim, we are installing just a simple loading zone on Hardin. It'll be a painted curb and it'll be some signs. It'll impact about 15 parking spaces. And so that area will be used for a rolling drop off in the morning and a pickup in the afternoon. And that was a joint effort between us and the high school and the Safe Routes to School consultant as well. And then as far as the OBAG application process, we submitted 2 applications for 2 different projects for the OBAG grant today. We just submitted them right before this meeting. So one was for the Loyola Corners plan that was discussed really in depth at our Complete Streets Commission meetings last summer. So that was part of the Complete Streets master plan process. Those are the ones that we did all the public outreach for and had extensive conversations at these meetings. The other project that we submitted the application for was the North San Antonio Road, and that's a pavement rehabilitation and a complete streets project as well. So I will keep you posted with updates on all of those. Another update is regarding VTA's Homestead Road project. They also submitted for an ATP application and additionally an OBAG grant application. So we should hear back about that at some point in the future as well. Those are all the updates I have. Let me know if you have any questions.
Anyone with questions or comments?
I had a question.
Yep, go ahead.
So the first program, the grant that you were saying, Marissa, what was the name of that, Marissa? The first one that you mentioned, was it the Beacon? What was it called?
Yes, the Beacon program. I don't know a lot about it. I hadn't heard of it previously. To my understanding, it's not a grant, but it's a program. And I have the flyer, so I'll send that out to you all after the meeting, or the acceptance letter. So we're basically accepted into the Beacon program, which is around climate change. And it's a framework for local governments to share best practices and learn what other communities are doing and to also share data.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then you mentioned one was the San Antonio in the, what was the other one for the OBEG grants, grants?
San Antonio Road was one and Loyola Corners was the other.
Thank you.
So in addition to commissioners, if there's any members of the public who have public comments on this item, feel free to raise your hand as well. And I'm going to keep calling on commissioners, but members of the public, you can put your hand up as well. Any other comments, questions from commissioners? I am not seeing any, and I'm also not seeing any from the members of the public. So let's move to commissioner reports and comments. Anyone with commissioner reports and comments? I'm not seeing anyone. I'm just going to give a brief report from VTA. VTA BPAC, we reviewed the OBEG grant complete streets checklists for any agency that wanted review at the VTA BPAC. Otherwise, review can happen by local agency, BPAC or equivalent. And one of the projects, as Marisa mentioned, that was submitted was Homestead Road Safe Routes to School project that largely runs kind of from Foothill, Homestead Road by Foothill Expressway all the way down to, I forget if it was Hollenbeck Avenue in Sunnyvale, Cupertino area. So one of the feedbacks that I wanted to say that I gave on Homestead Road with respect to Los Altos is there's discussion of extending that pathway that runs alongside of Homestead Road that the kids take to school up to Christ. And one of my feedback points was, great, but that doesn't solve the problem because the kids are on the wrong side of the road from the Luckies. They either cross Foothill Expressway at Arboretum and then they're on the wrong side of the road from Lucky's, or they come down Newcastle Avenue and they're on the wrong side of the road from the Lucky's area. So one of my pieces of feedback to the VTA was please consider not just going to Christ, but getting down to Lucky's. And beyond just my personal feedback, I would like to request if the city could support that feedback to the VTA. And whether it's this commission takes something forward or Marissa's staff takes something forward, or if we have the council take something forward, that would be my request. So I'm seeing some commissioners' heads nodding, so it sounds like support for that. So Marissa, maybe you and I can talk about the process of like, how do we move that forward? I think the VTA is not yet designing. What they applied for was grants to complete the design. So the other item I have to report on is the Traffic Safe Communities Network meeting. That's a quarterly meeting. The next meeting is August 11th at 10 a.m. I'm going to be traveling that day. Is there anyone who'd like to attend that meeting for me? It has been on Zoom thus far. I don't know when they're going to switch to in-person. If no one's available, if anyone is available, feel free to reach out to me. I can get you the logistics. If not, there will be meeting minutes. And if I can attend it before I get on the airplane, I will also do that because I'm in a different time zone.
What was the date again?
August 11th. It's a Thursday.
Okay.
Anyone else with updates? Any public comments on the commissioner's reports and updates? I'm not seeing any public comments. So let's move to the next item, potential future agenda items. Does anybody have anything? I'm opening my notebook so I can write them down. So feel free to just start talking if one of the commissioners has anything to add.
I guess let me start with a quick question, if I may. How are we doing against our work plan in terms of meeting schedules and meeting agendas?
I think that is something that we're planning with Chair, Vice Chair, and Marisa to go revisit planning out the meeting schedule for the last half of this year, because I think that was largely unpopulated. I think we've slowed down a little bit the last couple of months with, some items that have had to come back before us and come a couple times. So I think we have the action item to round that calendar out for the rest of the month. And then maybe next month, Marissa, does that work to have it ready by next month and we just bring it in here so everyone is informed of what the plan is and if anyone has any comments at that time?
Sure, yeah, you're saying update the work plan and bring it back at the next meeting for everyone to see?
No, not the work plan, the schedule, the monthly meeting schedule at the end.
Okay.
Which we had already been talking about doing anyway, so.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else with any item?
See a hand up.
What did you say, Suresh?
I see a hand up from one of the members of the public.
Oh, I missed it. I'm scrolled way down on the list, not at the top. Good catch. Bruce England. You have some time to talk. You have up to 3 minutes, but you don't need to use it all.
I'm not going to use it all. Just another FYI thing for you, because you talked about AB 43 earlier. I wanted to let you know that the Mountain View BPAC and the San Jose BPAC are having a joint meeting. I don't have the date in front of me. It's the next BPAC meeting for Mountain View, and they're going to talk about sort of best practices and ideas around AB 43 implementation. So to the point made earlier about work being done in advance of the implementation date by the state, Mountain View and San Jose are talking about it.
Great, thank you for sharing that with us.
Okay.
And I know that we can all find your agenda on the Mountain View website.
Yeah, and you can reach out to staff, of course, too.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Excellent.
Which
And go ahead, Commissioner Maloof.
Yeah, which actually begs a great question. You know, we've had one joint meeting with the Mountain View BPAC, my goodness, I don't know, 3 years ago, which I thought was very productive. And I was wondering whether that merits that we revisit that topic and have a joint meeting with them again.
Yeah, I very much support that as well. I had noted it down on our future agenda items to ask for. So when the chair and the vice chair meet with Marissa, I will raise that to her, but I'm glad you said that now because we have Bruce England listening in on this call tonight too. I'm not seeing anyone else, so let's move on from this item. And I always look down at the agenda and see the next item is adjournment. So we are 8:59 p.m. Thank you everyone for sticking through this meeting tonight and going through the Questa item again. Okay, good night.
Thank you, everyone.